Chapter 759. Yao Qi extended his hand and said, Yao Li clan leader, will you fight with me? The road ahead will be very, very difficult. Do you want me to go alone? Or do you want to build the Fox clan's empire with me? Yao Li clan leader, you need to make a decision. Either you kill me to avenge your son, or you fight with me to the end against these corrupted and depraved people. Yao Li clan leader's mind was in a mess. Yao Qi was his mortal enemy without a doubt. That was because he had killed his most beloved son. However, if he was in Yao Li's shoes, he would have killed him too. Was it for the joy of revenge? Or was it for the Fox clan's empire, that he abandoned his personal grudge? Yao Li was, of course, not a vulgar person. He was not a narrow-minded person. His creed was to fight for the Fox clan's great cause. He had always thought of himself as a lonely guardian. When Chairman Yongxi led the Fox clan to another path, he still stuck to the martial path and fought against Yongxi for hundreds of years. Now, a true kindred spirit had appeared, and it was the highest chairman of Little Western Paradise. Perhaps, Yao Qi was the last chance for the Fox clan's empire. I am a noble person, a great martyr. Yao Li kept repeating those words to himself. Then he slowly washed away the hatred and personal grudge in his heart. Finally, Yao Li clan leader slowly extended his hand and held Yao Qi's hand tightly. Yao Qi's eyes turned red and hot. He said emotionally, Yao Li clan leader, please remember that today is the beginning of a new era. Yao Li clan leader's face twitched. Chairman Yao Qi, I hope you remember your promise. Otherwise, even if you break the iron rule of the Fox clan, I will kill you personally. Yao Qi said, You don't have to kill me. If I harm the Fox clan's interests, it's the same as killing myself. Because my life is for the sake of the Fox clan's hegemony. Yao Li said, I will remember that. I will go back and prepare to stop the war. Wait, Yao Qi said. Yao Li clan leader, I have something important to tell you. Yao Li said, please. Yao Qi said, Wu Yu is on his way to kill you. Yao Li's gaze trembled. This name instantly pierced the deepest part of his heart. He was a person with lofty ambitions. He had dedicated his entire life to martial arts, to the cause of Demon Fox clan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have personally sent his future daughter-in-law, Yao Rao, to the human world to borrow her seed, making his son Yao Li hate him for life. Therefore, he didn't care about the matters between men and women. However, Wu Yu had truly attracted him deeply. That unique temperament, that unique facial aesthetics. In fact, her hoarse voice was not as delicate as a woman's. Her free and easy personality did not seem like a woman at all. However, this unique temperament of hers was enough to make many people extremely captivated. Unfortunately, perhaps it was because she was too carefree and unladylike, so she chose the weakest Yongxi among all her suitors. This was a pain that would haunt him for life. Why does she want to kill me? Yao Li asked. He looked at Yao Qi with burning eyes. Yao Qi said, Because Yang Dingtian and Yongxi set a trap to kill me. And the key to the trap is the endless eternal peak in 4 days. Now, I'm blocked outside Silver Moon City, and I can't reach the endless eternal peak. So, you've become an obstacle to this scheme, and she wants to kill you. Yao Li said, So, she wants to kill me because she wants to kill you? Yes, Yao Qi said. Yao Li said, How do you know about this? Yao Qi said, Because I arranged it. I asked Yang Dingtian to look for Dongfang Bingling, and asked Dongfang Bingling to look for Wu Yu to kill you. This is my test for Yang Dingtian. Yao Li said, Then, what are you going to do? Yao Qi said, Catch them all, kill them all. Princess Mu Dan, Wu Yu Dongli, kill them all. Anyone who stands in the way of Demon Fox clan's hegemony must die. Yao Li's body trembled, because this was his most beloved woman. Mr. Yao Li clan leader, she's also my most beloved woman, Yao Qi said slowly. She used to take care of me for a long time. But now, she's already an enemy of the Demon Fox clan. Yao Li took a deep breath and said, Alright, if it's like what you said, she's here to assassinate me, and she's already an enemy of the Demon Fox clan, then we'll kill her. But, Yao Li's eyes suddenly turned cold, and he said, Chairman Yao Qi, I hope that I can finish this alone. I don't need your help. Yao Qi frowned and said, Mister, are you sure? I'm sure, Yao Li said. I think it won't take me much effort to kill her. Yao Qi clenched her teeth and said, All right, as you wish. Wu Yu and Mu Dan flew at full speed, and they were getting closer and closer to Silver Moon City. Soon, they reached the north of Silver Moon City. The entire Silver Moon City was surrounded by millions of soldiers, and not even a drop of water could get through. But to Wu Yu, it wasn't a problem to pass through the army's encirclement and enter Silver Moon City. She could fly very high in the sky and choose the place where the army was the weakest to enter. After entering Silver Moon City, Wu Yu took out a heart-tearing letter and handed it to Mu Dan and said, Go, give this letter to Yaoli clan leader. I'll wait for him at the floating flame cave dwelling. Yes, Mu Dan took the letter and flew towards the palace in Silver Moon City. Mu Dan and Dongli were in the Silver Moon clan's army, helping to defend against the Alliance's army. So, she entered the palace without any hindrance and easily met Yaoli clan leader. Yaoli clan leader, this is a letter from sect leader Wu Yu, Mu Dan said. She's waiting for you at the floating flame cave dwelling. The moment Yaoli took the letter, although he tried his best to suppress it, his heart still twitched violently, and even his steel-like body trembled violently. It's here, it's really here. He opened the letter, and there was a familiar and special handwriting. It was a handwriting that no one could imitate. The content was very simple. It was just an invitation to go to the floating flame cave dwelling. After an entire long time, Yaoli calmed his surging emotions and said, All right, I'll go right away. Then, he flew towards the floating flame cave dwelling alone. For some reason, Yang Dingtian couldn't get into the book. He felt very uneasy, but he didn't know where it came from. Perhaps it was because Yaoli clan leader was about to be killed. After all, Yaoli had knelt in front of him and begged for his help. After all, he was Yaoli's father. But Yaoli wouldn't die. The trap for Yao Qi wouldn't succeed. From the looks of it, it was impossible for the Alliance's army to break through Silver Moon City within 4 days. It might even be impossible in half a month. Yang Dingtian wasn't a merciful person. If he could kill Yao Qi by sacrificing Yaoli, it might be worth it. Was that the source of his uneasiness? Since he couldn't get into the book, Yang Dingtian decided not to read it. He closed his eyes and lay there thinking. Just then Jia walked in. She stood at the head of the bed and looked at Yang Dingtian for a long time. Her gaze was a little strange. Of course she would find it strange. She didn't expect the kind and childish Jiang Shang from the Speechless clan to be so scheming. He actually conspired with Yongxi to kill Yao Qi. Wu Yu had already entered the Silver Moon clan, so this matter was basically confirmed. This meant that this Jiang Shang from the Speechless clan had even fooled her. Yang Dingtian opened his eyes and saw Jia looking at him with a complicated gaze. Why are you looking at me like that? Yang Dingtian asked. Jia said, Do women need a reason to look at their husbands? Yes, I need a reason, Yang Dingtian said. You looked at me like I was a childish child. Why are you looking at me so strangely now? Jia said, I just suddenly feel that you're different from what I imagined. Is that okay? Is that so? Why do I have such a feeling? Yang Dingtian asked. But from your gaze, why do I feel like I have fallen into a trap? Yes, you're about to fall into a trap. A trap of unfathomable depths, Jia said. Then, she crawled into Yang Dingtian's bed. I suddenly feel that you're so pitiful, Jia suddenly said as she lay on Yang Dingtian's body. These words that were filled with mockery and pity had infuriated Yang Dingtian. He suddenly flipped over and pressed Jia down. This was the only time that Yang Dingtian had taken the initiative. In the past, Yang Dingtian had always been motionless and passively accepted Jia's obligations. But this time, Jia didn't seem like a robot. It was as if she had some emotional reaction for the first time. It was also the first time that she acted like a normal woman. After it was over, Jia didn't get up and leave as usual. Instead, she lay on Yang Dingtian's chest and drew circles on his chest. You're not behaving normally, Yang Dingtian suddenly said. In the past, you've only done the routine when I needed it. You've fulfilled your duties as husband and wife. Today I don't need it at all. But you took the initiative to start. This isn't normal. Jia smiled and didn't say anything. Then, she got up from Yang Dingtian's body and touched his cheek. I just suddenly feel that you're a little pitiful. She repeated the word pitiful. Pitiful? Yang Dingtian was stunned. Weren't you pitiful when you caused me to become a cripple? No, a stupid person doesn't deserve to be pitiful. Jia said. A smart person deserves to be pitiful. A smart person deserves to be pitiful when he meets someone smarter than him. These words, like lightning, tore apart Yang Dingtian's mind. Then his mind suddenly exploded. Not good, not good, not good. There's a trap, there's a trap. Jia's abnormal behavior made it very clear. She pitied Yang Dingtian. She said that she thought Yang Dingtian was a stupid and childish person. She didn't expect him to be a smart person. It was just that he met someone smarter than him. Jia must have known something. That's why she said that and had such a reaction. Maybe Yao Qi had already guessed that he and Yongxi had conspired to kill him. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian's mind lit up. Then, based on this conclusion, he continued to think and speculate. Then, he instantly came to a terrifying conclusion. Yao Qi asked Wu Yu to kill Yao Li. It was just a test. Because under normal circumstances, Wu Yu had no reason to kill Yao Li. If Wu Yu really killed Yao Li, it meant that there was a conspiracy behind it. A conspiracy against Yao Qi. Yao Li stopped this conspiracy. Wu Yu was in danger. Bing Ling was in danger. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian shuddered. Could there really be such a terrifying brain in this world? Ning Wuming was very smart. However, he only knew how to set up schemes and traps. Wu Yuming was smart. However, he wasn't down to earth. Moreover, he was still naive and stubborn. Yao Qi's schemes and cleverness were all pervasive. Yang Dingtian couldn't resist at all. From when he saw through Yang Dingtian's identity, but didn't tell him whether he was dead or alive. Then, he made use of Yang Dingtian to increase his political reputation. Finally, he made use of Yang Dingtian to eliminate his political opponents and push forward his strategy. Everything was linked together. It was impeccable. He asked Yang Dingtian to find Mu Dan. He asked Mu Dan to find Wu Yu. He asked Wu Yu to kill Yao Li. In Yang Dingtian's opinion, this was extremely normal. However, who knew that it was a fatal test? Who would be able to guard against such a soundless scheme? It was impossible to guard against it. Yang Dingtian racked his brains. How to save her? How to save her? How could he save Bing Ling? It didn't matter if Wu Yu died. However, Bing Ling couldn't die. She couldn't die. Just then, Yao Qi slowly walked in and smiled. Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, I heard that you were feeling uneasy. Hence, I came to check on you. At the same time, Yao Li slowly walked into Piao Yan's cave. The first thing he saw was the unforgettable back view. Chapter 760. Wu Yu wasn't a very scheming person. She wasn't. She was very smart, but most of the time, she was too lazy to think. She would only think about it when she had no other choice. But there was one thing that she was very sharp about. She could clearly feel the emotional fluctuations of any living being. As for Yao Li's clan chief, he was also not a very scheming person. So when he saw Wu Yu's back, his heart was completely shaken. He could not keep his heart as calm as water. As soon as he stepped into the cave, he could not take another step forward. On the way here, he had thought about how he should deal with this. He should pretend that he did not care and chat with her. Then, after confirming her intentions, he would kill her coldly and decisively. That was the scene in his imagination. However, when he saw this unforgettable back view, all his calmness almost completely disappeared. Thousands of words were condensed into a single sentence. You're here to kill me? After saying that, he really wanted to slap himself. If he said that, wouldn't he reveal his trump card? If she denied it, and said that she was only here to catch up with him, what would he do? Would he continue to kill her? When Wu Yu heard that, her hands trembled slightly. She did not like to think. But now she knew that Yao Qi had seen through her. And it was a trap. A trap that trapped Yang Dingtian, Dongfang Bingling, and Wu Yu together. Actually, since a long time ago, she could not see through Yao Qi. At that time, he was still very young, and came to learn under Yongxi. He often fantasized about her. And he often looked at her back with an intense, infatuated gaze. When there was someone who treated you like a goddess in your dreams, you would naturally underestimate how dangerous he was. Because she always thought that if someone fantasized about you, then to you, the biggest danger would be that he would not be able to resist molesting you one day. She would not fantasize about him as a poisonous snake. She would only fantasize about him as a young man trapped in lust. But now, she deeply felt that behind Yao Qi's calm face, there was a deep and dangerous aura. Yes. Well, you didn't deny it. She directly answered, even though she knew that if she said this, it was likely that she would die. Yao Li's heart trembled. Wu Yu was still the same Wu Yu. Either he didn't speak, or he spoke the truth. You set up a trap to kill Yao Qi, and I became your obstacle. So you want to kill me? Yao Li asked. Wu Yu was silent for a moment. Yes. Yao Li said. Am I that worthless in your eyes? Wu Qiong said. Not really. Of course it's not that heavy. Yao Li said. You've already left Little Western Paradise. Why do you still want to meddle in the affairs of Little Western Paradise? Why did you kill Yao Qi? Wu Qiao said. It's not convenient to say. Yao Li asked. Because he imprisoned Yongxi. Wu Qiong said. That's not the only reason. You know that I've already fallen in love with someone else. Yao Li said. Do you know that Yao Qi found me not long ago? We talked a lot. I have something to ask you. When Yao Qi was killing Yao Li, were you rushing towards Cloud Heaven City? Wu Yu said. Yes. Yao Li said. Do you know that Yao Qi and I have become allies? Wu Yu said. I should be able to imagine. Yao Li said. Do you know that Yao Qi originally wanted to send experts to ambush you and kill all of you? However, when I said that I wanted to kill you personally, he trusted me and handed you over to me. Wu Yu was silent. Yao Li said. Then, do you think that I will kill you? Wu Yu thought for a moment and said. I don't think so. Yao Li sneered. Ha ha ha. You've overestimated your charm. I'm wholeheartedly working for the interests of the Fox clan. Whoever stands in the way of the Fox clan is my enemy and I'll kill them. Now, you're the enemy of the Fox clan. Wu Yu fell into silence again and did not speak. Yao Li said angrily. Why aren't you speaking? You're still the same as before. You look down on martial artists like me, right? You're still the same as before. You don't even bother to talk to me, right? Wu Yu said. I never felt that I had any charm, nor did I feel that I was very beautiful. I'm neither a man nor a woman. I'm not from the Fox clan, nor am I a human. I'm also not from the Speechless clan. Only a blind person would like me. Wentian wouldn't love me. He only loves Nihility Piaoling. Following that, Wu Yu said. I said that you won't kill me because you asked me. Based on my judgment of you, I said that. I don't have any intention of begging for mercy. Don't think too much about it. Yao Li said. Then, do you think that I can kill you? Wu Yu said. I should be able to. My martial path has been abandoned for many years. If I didn't promise some things, I wouldn't be willing to come out at all. I would just lie there and sleep every day. Yang Dingtian sent an army to seal off the entire Netherworld Sea. I couldn't be bothered to care. Yao Li said. Then are you not afraid of death? Wu Yu thought for a moment, then shook his head and said. Although I'm curious about the ending of this world, and hope to be able to truly help my lover, this thought isn't strong. Therefore I'm not afraid of death. Yao Li suddenly pulled out his sword, and placed it on Wu Yu's neck. In Yang Dingtian's room. There were only him and Yao Qi. Yang Dingtian stared at Yao Qi's face. After a long while he asked, Can you let Dongfang Bingling go? Yao Qi shook her head and said, Have you thought it through? Yes, I have, Yang Dingtian said. You sent Wu Yu to kill Yao Li. It was a test, a trap. Yao Qi said, Your brain is all right. You're just too lazy and don't like to think. Also, you should think about this matter yourself. You shouldn't have asked Jia to remind you. Yang Dingtian said, Sorry, my IQ is only so high. It's hard to force it. Following that, Yang Dingtian said, Can I beg you to spare Bingling's life? No, she's growing too fast. If she becomes stronger in the future, we'll be in trouble, Yao Qi said. In fact, her head is on the way. I'll give it to you. Yang Dingtian was shocked and said, She's dead? Yes, she's dead, Yao Qi said. Yang Dingtian's entire body started to shake violently. His emotions were like a volcano, surging crazily. No, that's impossible. He suddenly roared and sat up. Yao Qi patted Yang Dingtian's shoulder lightly and said, "You'll see in a while." Then, Yang Dingtian almost couldn't breathe. He wished that time would stop. He really didn't know if Yao Qi was telling the truth or not. Just like that, time ticked by. Yao Qi said one sentence after another to Yang Dingtian. However, Yang Dingtian didn't respond at all. 15 minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Yang Dingtian's heart was beating violently. He was in so much pain that his heart felt like it was going to burst out of his chest. "Come in," Yao Qi said. The door opened. The entire world seemed to have turned cold. Then the beautiful Jia walked in. She was holding a human head in her hand. She was extremely beautiful and had a face that could cause the downfall of a city. The blood on the neck had frozen into ice. It was Princess Mu Dan, his true love Dongfang Bingling. Jia threw Mu Dan's head directly in front of Yang Dingtian. Instantly, Yang Dingtian's brain exploded. It was as if a nuclear bomb had exploded in his brain. Then he didn't know anything. His entire body, his entire spirit, fell into complete numbness. When one's grief reached the extreme, it was like an expanse of nothingness, losing all perception. It was as if he had become a walking corpse. Just like that, he held Mu Dan's head in a daze. He looked into her eyes, trying to find a trace of life from within. Then, Yao Qi's voice rang in Yang Dingtian's ears. "Yang Dingtian, what's the real secret of the space-splitting fire?" Instantly, the answer appeared in Yang Dingtian's mind. Then he shuddered. No, this was a spiritual trap. Everything was fake. Bingling wasn't dead. Then, Yang Dingtian bit his tongue. Instantly, the scene in front of him changed. Dongfang Bingling's head in his hand turned into a snow-white snake's head. It was a huge white snake. Its eyes were even glowing. Jia, who was in front of him, turned into an extremely old man. She was Yao Qi's spiritual master. Yao Qi used Bingling's fake death to break Yang Dingtian's heart. Then, the moment the door opened, Yang Dingtian entered the spiritual master's illusion. In the illusion, the white snake's head turned into Bingling's head. Yang Dingtian hugged the head. He felt a heart-wrenching pain. He was completely disheartened. He completely lost his mind. Then, Yao Qi asked about the secret of the space-splitting fire. Yang Dingtian woke up very quickly. He immediately realized that it was a spiritual trap. However, it was too late. The spiritual master quickly wrote down some words on the parchment. Then, he handed it to Yao Qi without looking at it. Yao Qi took it. It was still Chinese. The space-splitting fire would bloom in 89 days, 16 hours and 30 minutes. The entrance to the space-splitting border was at the bottom of the ocean under the Silver Moon Clan's endless peak. The entrance was like a black hole. It would appear 13 days before the space-splitting fire bloomed. However, it would only open when the space-splitting fire was about to bloom. When it was not open, no one could enter. Yao Qi read it first. Then he frowned and said, "Wow, your language is so difficult. I've been learning it for 2 months, but I still can't grasp it completely." Then, he took out the Chinese annotation book and read it again. Then he said in the chaos language, "Let me read it again. See if there's anything wrong." Then, Yao Qi read it again in the chaos language. Yongxi had told him about the real space-splitting fire. There was nothing wrong with it. It was completely correct. Then, Yao Qi sighed and said, "Yang Dingtian, you're amazing. You know how to shield your brain. That teacher of mine is really powerful. He actually set up such a powerful trap to kill me. He purposely let me obtain fake information from your brain. There are only 2 differences between the fake information. The first is that he let me ingest the darkness crystal. The second is that the Void Fisher fire bloomed 10 days earlier than the real information. I almost fell for it. I almost lost my life." Then, Yao Qi took out 2 darkness crystals and said, "I've traded 2 darkness crystals with Dong Li. One of them is for the other fox demons to see if they'll die if they consume it. However, I know that the other fox demon wouldn't die after ingesting it, but I would definitely die. Although I don't know why, I'll definitely die after ingesting it. That's because my teacher taught me a lot of things. Therefore, some of my life is in his hands." Yang Dingtian looked at Yao Qi. He didn't even feel anything when the information about the real space-splitting fire was taken away. When you meet an opponent who was almost as smart as a demon, nothing could make up for the difference. After a long time, he only said one sentence, "Let Bingling go. And even Wu Yu, okay?" "Okay," Yao Qi said. "But you have to write a poem as punishment. You have to write it well enough to impress me, and make me admit that I'm not as good as you. Then I'll agree." Yang Dingtian asked, "When will it be used?" Yao Qi said, "Do you know? Leader Yao Li has already submitted to me. Therefore the war will end soon. When the time comes, the 9 tribes of Little Western Paradise will be there to celebrate my great victory. This poem needs to be used during this great ceremony." Yang Dingtian asked, "I'll copy it. Can I?" Yao Qi said, "Up to you. As long as you write it." Yang Dingtian asked, "What's the best wine you have here?" Yao Qi said, "Husband's Temple." "Wow, what a coincidence," Yang Dingtian said. After a while, Jia walked in and ground the ink for Yang Dingtian. There were no brushes in the human countries, because they didn't care about calligraphy. However, there were brushes in Little Western Paradise. Yang Dingtian didn't choose the thin gold body. Instead, he chose a casual brush style and wrote on the parchment, "To wine and song, how long is life?" For example, the morning dew, the passing days are bitter. Generous, unforgettable. How to solve the sorrow, only husband's temple. Indigo collar, my heart is long. But for the king, I pondered until now. The deer's cry, eating the apples of the wild. I have guests playing the flute and blowing the shung. Bright as the moon, when can it be cleared? Sorrow comes from within, unbreakable. Crossing the border, wasting each other's existence. Talking about the feast, remembering the old kindness. The moon is bright and the stars are sparse, the magpies fly south. Circling the tree 3 times, where can I rely on? The mountain is not too high, the sea is not too deep. Demon Duke spits, the world follows his heart. This was Chow Chow's short song line. Perhaps it was the most suitable for the proud and generous Yao Qi. Of course, Yang Dingtian copying this poem could also be considered as a curse towards Yao Qi. Chow Chow sang this song before the Battle of Red Cliff. Then he welcomed his biggest failure in history. Coincidentally, this song could be directly translated into the chaotic language without losing its artistic conception. He only needed to change 3 words. Of course, no one in the human countries appreciated this. Only in the Little Western Paradise, where artistic attainments were extremely high, would there be people who would appraise it. As expected, Yao Qi and Jia looked at this song with dazzling eyes. They were deeply shocked and intoxicated by it. Especially Yao Qi. He had a desire to roar out. This song seemed to have completely released the heroism in his heart, in a very elegant and majestic way. He had also written a song for the upcoming ceremony. But it was really not as good as this one. This song was really a masterpiece. After a long while, Yao Qi said slowly, "Mr. Jiang Shang, I finally know why intelligent life forms are intoxicated by art. It's because martial arts might have an end, but art is really endless. Looking at your poem, my heart wavered. I feel that art is greater than martial arts. You are still talented." Yang Dingtian looked at Yao Qi and said seriously, "I really copied it." All right. Yao Qi smiled and said, "I'll take it that you copied it." Then, Yao Qi took the song and took it away. Yang Dingtian said, "Remember what you promised me." Yao Qi said, "I didn't plan to kill them. I can't kill them now. It's not the time. Also, Yao Li can't do it to Wu Yu. That's why I let him go." Yao Li's sword was placed on Wu Yu's neck. Wu Yu said, "Yao Li, you can kill me. If you don't want to kill me, don't cut my neck, okay?" Yao Li twitched and said fiercely, "You don't think that I don't dare to kill you?" Wu Yu shook his head and said, "All right, I'm leaving. I'm going to Silver Moon City to take Mu Dan and Dongli away." Then, Wu Yu walked out and flew towards Silver Moon City. As for Yao Li, he instantly collapsed onto the ground. Then he roared crazily. He didn't use any celestial chi or any defense. He just used his fists to hit the hard cave wall. With his cultivation, he could easily destroy the entire cave and come out unscathed. But he purposely made himself bloody to reduce the pain in his heart. An hour later, Wu Yu brought Mu Dan and Dongli, and left Silver Moon City quickly. They left Little Western Paradise quickly. Yao Li didn't stop them at all. Then, Yao Li went to Yao Qi with his naked upper body, and the sharp iron thorns on his back. He knelt down and asked for forgiveness. Then, he passed the sword to Yao Qi, and asked him to cut off his head. Yao Qi slashed the sword and cut off the iron thorns on Yao Li's body. But he didn't comfort him. He just sighed and turned to leave. The next day, Yao Li, the chief of Silver Moon City, officially led Silver Moon City to surrender to the Alliance Army and Chairman Yao Qi. Then, he declared his loyalty to Chairman Yao Qi in front of everyone, and asked the Supreme Council to punish him. Then, the war that had lasted for more than a month had officially ended. Yao Qi obtained an unprecedented victory. Not only did he completely destroy the Righteous Alliance, but he also gained the loyalty of the bravest Silver Moon clan. Not only that, after the chief of Silver Moon clan surrendered, he immediately went to the Oceanic clan and had a long talk with the chief of Oceanic clan. So 3 days later, the Oceanic clan also declared their loyalty to Chairman Yao Qi. Then, the 9 clans of Little Western Paradise all submitted to Yao Qi. In less than 3 months, Chairman Yao Qi completely controlled the entire Little Western Paradise. His reputation reached the peak. Then, he brought Yang Dingtian to the bottom of the endless peaks behind Silver Moon City. As expected, they saw a dark spacetime door. This was the entrance to the spacetime fire. It had already appeared. As long as the spacetime fire bloomed, the entrance would open automatically. Chapter 761. Looking at the mysterious and dark void rift fire entrance, he could clearly feel that there was something mysterious behind the entrance. Power. Yao Qi suddenly smiled and said, "Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, if I didn't see through your and Yongxi's plan, I would have already consumed the dark crystal and died in front of you." Yang Dingtian said, "Chairman's wisdom is unparalleled. How am I a match for him?" Yao Qi wasn't interested in killing a tiger, so he didn't scold Yang Dingtian anymore. He smiled and said, "All right, go back. Come back in 10 days. 10 days later, the void rift fire would be released, and the entrance would open automatically. Then, Yao Qi and Yang Dingtian left. In Silver Moon City, Yao Qi and Yao Li had a meeting again. Then, Yao Li removed the martial arts army guarding the endless peak. Then, Yao Qi's trusted martial arts experts took over all the entrances to the endless peak. Then, Yao Qi brought the Alliance army back to Silver City. In Silver City's plaza, all the high nobles held a grand ceremony for Yao Qi's triumphant return. Countless fox nobles and Silver City citizens came from the plaza to the Silver Palace. There were millions of them. Countless flowers and wine welcomed Chairman Yao Qi's triumphant return. Under the protection of the Qilin army, Yao Qi rode on his horse and stepped on the beautiful carpet. He returned to the Silver Palace amidst countless cheers. This time, of course, he didn't let Yang Dingtian share his glory. After returning to the Silver Palace, Yao Qi immediately entered the deep prison to visit Yongxi. The huge metal door slowly opened. Yongxi was still in the shape of a fox. He was tightly locked inside. The entire energy prison still made Yongxi unable to move. If he released even a little bit of energy, he would die. When the metal door opened, Yongxi's eyes were filled with anticipation and desire. He hoped to see Yang Dingtian walk in from behind the door. However, it was Yao Qi who walked in. He shuddered violently, and his shining eyes dimmed in an instant. "My dear teacher, you must be very surprised to see me alive, right?" Yao Qi smiled and said, What did you do to Yang Dingtian?" Yongxi asked. "Don't worry, I won't kill him." Yao Qi said, "Master, do you have anything to say to me?" Yongxi stopped trembling, and a complicated expression appeared in his eyes. He said, "Yao Qi, stop before it's too late. The path you want to take is a path of no return. It will destroy the entire Fox Demon clan and the entire world. Teacher, even if the meteors in the sky disappear in an instant, they still burn brightly. Even if it only shines for a moment, it's better than a nameless meteorite living for 10,000 years." Yao Qi said, "I'm here to ask you, do you have any other plans for me?" Hehe. Yongxi said, "Winner takes all, I understand." After that, Yongxi suddenly gritted his teeth, and then the profound energy throughout his body suddenly erupted. This was an energy prison. Moving a little bit of profound qi, a little bit of energy, would mean death. The moment the eternal life energy burst out, the huge energy array inside the energy prison suddenly activated, and a powerful energy crazily poured into his body, causing his whole body to split open. His life was quickly drained from his body. He had failed, so he chose death. No, you can't die yet, Yao Qi roared. You haven't seen the establishment of the Western Kingdom, you can't die. Close, Yao Qi roared. However, the energy in the energy prison was still crazily tearing Yongxi's body apart. In an instant he became worse than a ghost. After a few seconds the energy prison closed. Yao Qi quickly went forward and checked Yongxi's breathing and pulse. There was almost no sign of life. Someone come, Yao Qi shouted. Instantly, a powerful mental strength master and a great warlock walked in. He can't die yet. No matter what, we have to save him, Yao Qi ordered. Yes. The great warlock bowed. At night, Chairman Yao Qi held an unprecedentedly large banquet in the Silver Palace. The scale was even bigger than when he conferred the title of Great Sage Yang Dingtian. Not only the high nobles of Silver City, but also the important people of the 9 great tribes. The hall was filled with people, and even the plaza was filled with people. Of course, the banquet this time wasn't the so-called victory banquet. Yao Qi said that the war this time couldn't be called a victory. It should be called a victory of ideals, a victory of wisdom. The theme of the banquet tonight was, the 9 great tribes return to one. It was to celebrate the reunification of Little Western Paradise, after a short period of division. Although Demon Clan leader Li had lost and surrendered, he received the second-best treatment from Yao Qi. He became the most distinguished guest of the night. Yao Qi didn't mention Yao Li clan leader at all. He even said that if the war really broke out, the army led by Yao Qi might not be Yao Li's opponent. It was Yao Li clan leader who was noble and virtuous. For the future of the Fox clan, he put down his weapons and united them. Also, the 9 great tribes assembly voted in front of everyone, and the Silver Moon clan entered the 9 great tribes assembly again. Yao Qi, who was full of pride, couldn't help but feel happy and excited. He recited a poem in front of everyone. However, what he recited wasn't the short ballad that Yang Dingtian made for him. Instead, he recited the poem that he wrote himself. Yang Dingtian listened to the poem. Although it wasn't a masterpiece like the short ballad, it was still a first-class poem. Unfortunately, other than martial arts and politics, Yao Qi was actually quite accomplished in literature and art. However, he didn't really like it, so he didn't purposely show it. Yang Dingtian believed that if he really created the Western Kingdom Empire one day, and became the first emperor of the empire, he might be able to write a classic poem that was comparable to the short ballad. As the great sage, Yang Dingtian attended the banquet for a short period of time. However, he quickly excused himself due to health reasons. Then he stayed in his palace alone. As Yao Qi's important assistant, Jia had to accompany him to receive all kinds of distinguished guests. Right now, Jia seemed to have completely blossomed. Every part of her body was desperately releasing a beautiful light. Of course, this was her dream all along. As Yao Qi's chairman, as the First Lady, Yang Dingtian was still lying on his bed, reading the legend of the Demon King Wentian. Firstly, Wentian was the same as him, a transmigrator. However, Yang Dingtian was now certain that Wentian's method of transmigration was different from his. Yang Dingtian's entire body and soul had transmigrated while Wentian's soul had only transmigrated. In other words, his soul on Earth had possessed Wentian's body in the primal chaos world. Although there wasn't much information recorded, it could be seen that before Wentian was 23 years old, he was paralyzed on his bed. Not to mention not being able to practice martial arts. He couldn't even move. Of course, before the age of 23, he wasn't famous at all. Therefore, there wasn't much information recorded. However, one thing was clear. For 23 years, he was lying on his bed. He was either reading, talking to himself, or playing games with himself. When he was 23 years old, he was suddenly able to stand up from his bed. After that, he began his heaven-defying life. Or rather, it could be said that he completely shocked everyone, until he became the #1 person in the world. Therefore, perhaps from that day onwards, Wentian's body was transmigrated by the soul of a certain earth. As for how he stood up and how he became so strong, no one knew. After that, Yang Dingtian flipped through the records again and again, looking at the records of Wentian before and after the world-ending battle. However, it was a pity that not many people knew about this. Therefore, the records were very simple. At this moment, footsteps could be heard from outside. Jia was currently in high spirits, enjoying her life as the #1 lady. How could she bear to return so early? Listening carefully, it wasn't Jia. It wasn't her footsteps. It was Yao Ling, Yao Li's younger sister, Yao Li's daughter. At this moment, she was no longer a prisoner. She was now the princess of the Silver Moon race, one of the most eye-catching guests tonight. Therefore, the world was truly unpredictable. A few months ago, she was almost beheaded as an assassin. But now, she was already a high and mighty princess. Yao Ling, you're an important guest tonight. Why don't you show off your beauty at the ball? Yang Dingtian smiled. Yao Ling walked to Yang Dingtian and said, My father surrendered. Our Silver Moon race is saved. Did you do this? Yang Dingtian was stunned. You're flattering me. I don't have that ability, Yao Ling said. But I did ask you to help save the Silver Moon race. You also said that my father surrendered. Yang Dingtian said, This really has nothing to do with me. In fact, your father and Chairman Yao Qi are very like-minded. Isn't this good? Not only is Silver Moon City saved, but you've also regained your nobility and freedom. Yao Ling sat on Yang Dingtian's bed and shook her head. I don't like this. How can my father surrender? How can he forget about my brother's revenge? Yang Dingtian said, Your father is a man of great ambition. Anyway, I don't like this, Yao Ling said. I think my father has been corrupted by Yao Qi. Yang Dingtian didn't reply to that. Jiang Shang, what I said before still counts, Yao Ling suddenly said. Yang Dingtian was startled and asked, What words? Yao Ling said, I said that if Silver Moon City is saved, I'll give myself to you. Now that there's no one around, do you want it? Yang Dingtian was shocked. He waved his hand. No, I don't want it. Yao Ling sighed and didn't say anything else. What's wrong? Is there something on your mind? Yang Dingtian asked. Yao Ling said, You're from the speechless race. You're so smart. Take a guess. Yang Dingtian said, Your father wants to marry you to Yao Qi as his second wife. Yao Ling was stunned. How do you know? Is the speechless race really that smart? Yang Dingtian smiled. It's not easy to guess. Your father is a more loyal ally than Yao Ru II. So it's normal for Yao Qi to marry you. Yao Ling said, But I don't want to marry him. I hate him. Yang Dingtian said, I hate him too, but he's a great person. Yao Ling fell silent. She suddenly asked, Right, do you think I can escape the marriage if I escape to the human world? Yang Dingtian smiled. Why did you escape to the human world? Do you have a lover there? Yang Dingtian was just asking casually, but Yao Ling's face turned red. She couldn't help but be stunned. She really had a human lover. Who is he? What's his name? Yang Dingtian smiled. Yao Ling said, You don't know him anyway. And we were not lovers. Nothing happened between us. I don't have the guts. He's so boring. He doesn't even dare to touch me. Yang Dingtian asked again, What's his name? I don't know. Anyway, we call each other Hey. Also, I can't understand him, and he can't understand me. The demon spirit said, The human primal chaos language is very difficult to understand. Furthermore, he rarely speaks a word in 3 days. Yang Dingtian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be him? Yang Dingtian said, Tell me, where did you see him? Yao Ling said, It was more than 4 years ago. I wanted to go to the human world to find Yao Rao, because my brother was looking for her like crazy. Okay, actually, I wanted to go to the human world to play. So when I went to the Skull Hall, the door to the human world couldn't be opened. Then, I waited there for the humans to come in. Then I went to the human world. Who knew that a man suddenly flew in and sat there motionless? I couldn't wake him up. He ignored me. For a few months, I was really afraid that he would die. So I stayed by his side. Then one day he was really going to die. I don't know why, but his whole body seemed to be burning. But he wasn't attacked or anything. Just like that, he was going to die. I was scared and hurriedly carried him out of the hall. I entered the little Western paradise and found someone to cure him. Then for the next 2 years, I was with him. We played and cultivated everywhere. We even swallowed a male and female earth-level mystic flame. Later, Father found out about us. He was so angry that he almost broke my legs. After he knew that I fell in love with a human, he was furious. But he still gave me a chance. If this human could make me go into heat, he would let us be together. In the end, although I liked him, he was a human. He couldn't make me go into heat. So Father gave me a choice. Either kill him or break off our relationship. I didn't want him to die, so I broke off our relationship. Father asked a spiritual master to erase all his memories. Then he sent him out of the little Western paradise and back to the human world. After hearing the demon spirit's words, young Dingtian was completely stunned. Because he knew who this was. It was Shadowless, the Shadowless who never spoke. Master, one of Dongfang Mimi's confidants. No wonder he could successfully leave the abstinence continent. No wonder he couldn't remember anything after leaving. No wonder he broke through to the Grandmaster realm. So, most of his cultivation was done in the little Western paradise. The reason why he lost his memories was because a spiritual master more powerful than the demon spirit erased it. So, this was the mystery of shadowless cultivation in the taboo continent. Obviously, he passed the first trial alone, but died in the second trial, the magma continent. He burned to death in the illusion, and would die in reality. It was the demon spirit who saved him. Yang Dingtian couldn't help but look at the demon spirit. This was the family of the Council of Light. While he was pleasantly surprised, footsteps suddenly sounded from outside. This time Jia really came back. Seeing the demon spirit sitting on the bed, she frowned slightly and said, "Miss Yao Ling, you shouldn't be here. Chairman Yao Qi is waiting for you outside." The demon spirit's expression changed. Then she got up and walked outside. Jia looked at Yang Dingtian and said, "Husband, on such a day of celebration, you seem very lonely, right?" Yang Dingtian smiled and didn't answer. Jia left the room again and returned to the banquet hall. The next day, the Tribal Alliance Council held a meeting again. This time, more than 1,000 counselors from the 9 big tribes participated. In the meeting, they finally decided on Chairman Yao Qi's highest leadership. At this time, Yao Qi finally secured the position of chairman and completely controlled the little Western paradise. A few days passed by in the blink of an eye. 5 days later, Yao Qi brought Yang Dingtian and Jia secretly to the bottom of the endless eternal peak. At this time, there were still 4 hours before the space-splitting fire bloomed. Time slowly passed. Even Yao Qi felt a little nervous, because the most crucial moment was coming. The space-splitting fire was about to bloom. In that case, would the entrance to the void border open? The 3 of them were silent as they waited for the final moment to arrive. 1 hour. Half an hour. 15 minutes. 5 minutes. 3 minutes. 1 minute. Time was up. Then an incomparably mysterious spatial door slowly opened. Behind the space door was the bizarre void border of light and land. The space-splitting fire bloomed. Chapter 762. Looking at the opening of the space-splitting fire, Yao Qi's hands trembled, then he calmed down. Even if he was extremely excited, he would still control his emotions and calm himself down. That was because he had always believed that most fatal mistakes were made when one was greedy and agitated. The space-splitting fire was the most important part to him. Obtaining the space-splitting fire and the treasures of the Naga Empire meant that the Western Kingdom's first step was complete. Therefore, this should be when he was the most excited. Previously, when the Silver Moon clan surrendered and the banquet in the Silver Palace, he was very excited. In reality, he was not that excited. Instead, he was observing everyone calmly. Even earlier, when he shook hands with Yao Li's clan leader, he felt a small surge of excitement. But now he was really excited. The space-splitting fire that he had waited for more than 100 years was finally going to bloom. The opening was big enough. He could even see the mysterious scene of the void border inside. Yao Qi wasn't in a hurry. She smiled at Yang Dingtian and said, Mr. Jiang Shang, could this be another trap that you have set? That's good, Yang Dingtian said in his heart, but he did not answer him. That's right. If it was a trap. But unfortunately it was not. Yao Qi was so paranoid. Suddenly Yao Qi said, how about this? Let's go in together. Yang Dingtian could not help but laugh. You're not afraid that I'll steal your space-splitting fire? Yao Qi smiled. You said it's my space-splitting fire. Of course, you can't steal it. Then, he grabbed Yang Dingtian with one hand and Jia with the other, and slowly walked into the opening of the space-splitting fire. If it was a trap, then Yang Dingtian would die together with him. As expected, it was not a trap. Yang Dingtian seemed to have passed through a special space door, and instantly arrived in another world. This was the void border. Oh, that's right. This was the void border. Based on his feet, he guessed that it was something called land. However, it was completely dark. It did not feel like land at all. Instead, it felt like a special kind of dark matter. It was somewhat similar to the dark matter that kept spreading at the bottom of the sea. Yao Qi could not help but take out a sword and slash at the dark matter beneath her feet. He realized that he couldn't hurt him at all. This void boundary seemed to be infinitely big, but also very small. That was because there was only darkness behind him. He didn't know if it was the invisible darkness or the dark matter beneath his feet. In front of him was an endless abyss and countless bizarre images of light and land. There were no signs of life in the entire void border. Oh, I guess there is. In the light and shadow of the abyss, it seemed as if energy creatures could be seen swimming. In the chaos world, it was very, very rare to see lightning-type creatures, but here, there were plenty of them. That blue transparent snake didn't have a physical body at all. It was just a ball of light, but it was also alive. The void border was such a harsh environment, and only this kind of energy creature could survive. At this moment, the void crack fire should not have truly bloomed yet. This was because there were no rising flames at the bottom of the abyss at the border of the void. According to Yongxi, when the void crack fire bloomed, it would fill up the entire abyss at the border. Come, let's sit down and wait. Yao Qi patted the ground. Then the three of them sat down. Jia, when the mystic fire blooms later, remember to look after your husband, Yao Qi said. Don't let him move, and don't let any trace of mystic qi or consciousness come out of him. Yes, speaker, Jia said. I will take good care of my husband. Then, she held Yang Dingtian's hand tightly. She used her powerful energy to lock all of Yang Dingtian's mystic meridians. Even though Yang Dingtian pretended that his energy sea was completely destroyed, they were still worried. Time passed second by second. By right, this should be a very tense moment, but Yao Qi wasn't. Instead, she became very calm. Mr. Jiang Shang, you've been reading The Legend of the Demon King Wentian recently. What do you think? Yao Qi asked. Yang Dingtian said, I'm curious about something. What's the cultivation of this demon king? I've always heard that he's very close to the saint level. So is Nihility Piaoling. Of course, I was talking about 200 years ago. Then he's very close to the saint level, Yao Qi said. Anyway, he's more powerful than I am now. More powerful than you? Yang Dingtian was shocked. Of course, Yao Qi said. Yao Qi said, I don't care about cultivation because in the Little Western Paradise, cultivation isn't the only thing that matters. Also, the most powerful group of people in Little Western Paradise are now loyal to me. Then, Yao Qi said, Of course, I'm still the most powerful among the younger generation in Little Western Paradise. Yang Dingtian said, Then, how does the cultivation of the Demon King Wentian and Nihility Piaoling from 200 years ago compare to the top elites in Little Western Paradise? Yao Qi said, There's no way to compare. If it's in Little Western Paradise, of course, the top elites in Little Western Paradise would win. But if it's in the human countries, the fox demon race is very limited. So, unless it's absolutely necessary, we won't enter the human countries. It's too harmful to our cultivation. Yang Dingtian said, Luckily the human countries would be in trouble. Yao Qi shook her head and said, When we produce a large number of demigod descendants, they won't have such limitations. So, by then the entire human countries will be a part of our empire. Whoosh! Suddenly, a flame appeared in the void abyss. Even though it had just appeared, it was very eye-catching because it was snow-white. It was Yang Dingtian's first time seeing a snow-white flame. Yao Qi's breathing stopped, and she smiled at Yang Dingtian. Jia's Xianqi tightly locked onto every inch of Yang Dingtian's body. Then the three of them didn't speak. The white flame grew bigger and bigger. Then it abruptly split into two flowers. One was black, and the other was white. Was this the origin of the space-splitting fire? The flame that had split continued to grow bigger. When it reached a certain size, it started to split again. Just like that, the mysterious flame continued to split, and split, and split again and again. Suddenly, the entire void abyss was filled with the mysterious space-splitting fire. The black flame was originally invisible, but it became clearly visible against the white flame. Now, Yao Qi was completely convinced that it was the space-splitting fire. It had to be the space-splitting fire, the second-ranked space-splitting fire in the world. The entire mystic flame was still splitting and splitting. In the end, other than the dark matter under their feet, they couldn't see anything else. Everything in sight was the space-splitting fire. Finally, the space-splitting fire stopped splitting, but it was still changing. The black flame and the white flame started to merge. They turned into an extremely complicated color that kept changing. In the end, the entire flame was becoming transparent. It kept becoming transparent, and transparent. Once it was completely transparent, it meant that it couldn't be seen. It also meant that it had completely matured. In an instant, the entire void abyss became extremely beautiful. Other than the dark matter under their feet, the entire void abyss became like a complete crystal. It was sparkling and translucent. That's right. The space-splitting fire had completely bloomed. Yao Qi glanced at Yang Dingtian. According to Yongxi, the space-splitting fire's way of swallowing was to jump directly into the flame. Not only would it swallow the flame, but it would also enter a special space. But Yao Qi instinctively doubted any important words that others said. What if jumping into the flame was a trap? So he chose to inject some Xianqi into the space-splitting fire carefully. There was no reaction. There was no reaction at all. Then, he stared at the space-splitting fire and injected some divine consciousness. Still there was no reaction. Then, it seemed that there was no other way other than jumping down. At the same time, Yang Dingtian looked at the space-splitting fire in front of him in a daze. He thought that the black-green Xian fire in his sea of qi would go crazy. It would be greedy and restless. But it didn't. Instead, it lay dormant even deeper. Yao Qi suddenly said, "Mr. Jiang Shang, if this is Yongxi's final trap for me, what do you think I should do?" Yang Dingtian was curious. Why did Yao Qi always call him Jiang Shang in front of Jia? Yang Dingtian was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I don't know. Only you can answer this question." Yao Qi asked, "Then, do you think I should jump down?" Yang Dingtian said, "Is the space-splitting fire that important to you? Compared to your life, which is more important?" "Of course my life is more important. With my life, I have everything," Yao Qi said. Yang Dingtian said, "Then don't jump. If it's a trap, you're dead." Yao Qi sighed and said, "But there's something more important than life. That's determination and determination. If it's a cowardly life, then it's not worth mentioning." Yao Qi stood up slowly. She looked at the crystal-clear space-splitting fire below. The time for a Xian fire to mature was very short. It would disappear very soon. Once it disappeared, she would have to wait for another 200 years. Just like what Yao Qi said. If it was Yongxi's trap, she would die if she jumped down. But if she didn't jump down, it meant that she was cowardly. It meant that she had compromised with herself. That might be even scarier than death. Yao Qi said slowly, "Sir, if I don't jump down today, I won't dare to jump down forever. 200 years later, 400 years later, or even 800 years later, I'll lose the space-splitting fire forever. If I don't jump down, how will I know if it's real or fake? A cowardly life won't be able to build an empire." Yao Qi walked towards the abyss and said, "If it's really a trap set by my teacher, Then please tell him that I'm convinced. He set me up. She stood at the edge of the abyss. Below her was the raging space-splitting fire. Yao Qi turned around and said, Mister, the song you made for me is fine. I like it very much. But I didn't recite it at the banquet, because I don't think it's appropriate. Then, I'll recite it now. Then, Yao Qi began to recite a short song one word at a time. And it was in Chinese. That's right, it was Chinese. It wasn't the fox demon's language, or the chaotic language. To whine and song, how long is life? For example, the morning dew, the passing of days is bitter. Generous, unforgettable. How to solve the sorrow, only the nunnery. Green collar, my heart longs. But for you I've pondered till now. The deer's cry, eating the apple of the wild. I have a guest, playing the flute and blowing the shung. Bright as the moon, when will it fade? Sorrow comes from within, unstoppable. Crossing the border, wasting each other's existence. Talking about the banquet, remembering the old kindness. The moon is bright and the stars are sparse, the magpies fly south. Circling the tree 3 times, where can I rely on? The mountain is not too high, the sea is not too deep. The demon duke spits, the world belongs to him. Even though it was Yao Qi's first time reading Chinese characters, he had completely learned the pronunciation from the annotations. So, it wasn't very standard, but it was much better than Yang Dingtian's fox demon's language. Even though it wasn't standard, the cadence completely released the essence of the song. That kind of inner heroism, that kind of magnificent aura. Even if Yang Dingtian were to recite this song, he wouldn't be able to have such an aura. After reciting it, Yao Qi looked at Yang Dingtian. Thank you for your poem. Then he suddenly jumped into the transparent, raging space-splitting fire. First, it was completely still. Then Pucci. His legs turned into ashes. Then his legs turned into ashes. His entire body quickly disappeared, completely disappearing. His face suddenly trembled and he smiled. It's really a trap. Teacher, you're so powerful. I can't possibly escape from this trap. Amazing, amazing. Then he couldn't break free at all. He could only watch as the terrifying flame destroyed everything about him. Jia was instantly stunned. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Ah. Then, she suddenly let out a series of screams. Immediately after, he tossed Yang Dingtian aside, and was about to jump down into the flames, in an attempt to save Yao Qi. No, stop. Yao Qi suddenly shouted. He didn't have much time left. His entire body quickly disappeared. Jia, I don't have much time left. You have to remember what I'm going to say next. Yao Qi said with a trembling voice. Jia's face was covered in tears. Her body was twitching. She stood beside the flame, completely broken down. At this moment, Yang Dingtian only needed to push her lightly, and she would die. However, Yang Dingtian didn't do that. Take out the recording jade, and record my current situation, Yao Qi said. Jia took out the recording jade from her chest. After I die, let great sage Yongxi and great sage Jiangshang govern the country, Yao Qi said. Because she couldn't remember her voice, Yao Qi's lips were very clear. No. Jia burst into tears and said, they are the ones who killed you. I will tear them to shreds to shreds. Yao Qi shook her head vigorously and said, if I die, no one in the little western paradise will be able to support the establishment of an empire. No one can control Jiangshang, and no one can give birth to a demigod. Then, Yao Qi looked at Yang Dingtian and said, Mr. Jiangshang, actually, I'm really tempted by the path you mentioned. Let the fox demon race live forever. I don't want to be like the Naga Empire, whose brilliance will disappear and the world will be destroyed. However, I really don't want to live in obscurity like this. I'd rather die brilliantly than live in solitude. So as long as I'm alive, I have to make a grand entrance and conquer the world. But if I die, then I'll walk the path you mentioned. After I die, you and great sage Yongxi will govern the country. Continue on the path you mentioned. Yang Dingtian nodded. Yao Qi's entire body had disappeared. Only her neck and head were left. She gasped for breath, but there was no body for her to breathe. At this moment, only his soul was left. Sir, did I do something wrong? Why did I fail? Yao Qi asked. Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't lose in any battle with anyone." Yao Qi said, Then why did I die? Why did I fail?" Yang Dingtian said, "This is fate. It's also your personality. Your personality determines your fate. Even if you do it 10 times, 100 times, you'll still end up like this. Because you'll still make the same choice. You'd rather die gloriously than live like a coward." Yao Qi said, "That means I didn't do anything wrong?" Yang Dingtian said, "You didn't. You're the most outstanding person I've ever seen. But perhaps this world won't allow you to exist." "That's good. That's good." Yao Qi smiled. His neck had turned into ashes. His chin had turned into ashes. "Sir, I really like and admire people like you. You can be so smart and so open and aboveboard. You even have to deceive yourself when you're setting up a conspiracy. No wonder you're the leader that everyone respects. I hope you'll succeed in the path you're walking. Take care." Then, Yao Qi's mouth turned into ashes. Then her nose and eyes. Finally, her entire head disappeared. Yao Qi's entire person, her entire life, and her entire soul turned into ashes. This was the smartest and most outstanding person that Yang Dingtian had ever seen. He was a true hero of his generation. But he died in front of him just like that. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. He was winning every step he took. In the end, he even suspected that this was Yongxi's scheme. If he jumped down, he would die. If he didn't jump down, it meant that he was weak and compromised. It meant that he would lose the void-splitting fire forever. So he chose to jump down. Then he died. Yang Dingtian's entire body was shocked. In front of this person, Yang Dingtian had never won a single point. He had always lost. He had always been in the palm of his hand. But now he was still immersed in sorrow. Of course, if he had a choice, he would have let Yao Qi die every time. Because Yao Qi was the real enemy. An enemy that couldn't be changed. But the enemy's death brought him even more sorrow. Chapter 763. Jia was still unwilling to go out. She stared at the abyss below for a long time, as if she longed for Yao Qi to appear in front of her again. However, there was no doubt that the miracle did not happen. Neither she nor Yang Dingtian knew what the flame was. Why was Yao Qi unable to break free despite being so powerful? Gradually, the transparent flame disappeared. The entire void border returned to its original state. The entrance to the bottom of the sea began to close gradually. "Alright, it's time to go," Yang Dingtian said. Jia ignored him and continued to stare at the abyss blankly. Yang Dingtian grabbed her arm and tried to drag her out. "Don't touch me. Don't touch me now." Suddenly Jia screamed. Then she muttered to herself, "The Western Kingdom's hope has been destroyed. The demonic Fox clan's hegemony has been destroyed." Yang Dingtian ignored her. He carried her and rushed out of the space portal that was getting smaller and smaller. Then the space portal at the bottom of the sea closed completely. The void border that had turned Yao Qi into ashes completely disappeared. The two of them slowly floated to the surface of the sea. "Jiang Shang, if it were you, would you have jumped down?" Jia asked. Yang Dingtian thought for a while. If it were him, would he have jumped down? Then, the answer was yes. If he really would have jumped down, he would have jumped down too. Although it could have been a trap, it was more likely to be the void-splitting fire. If he missed it, he would miss it forever. Of course, to Yang Dingtian, the void-splitting fire was not absolutely crucial. However, from Yao Qi's point of view, it was absolutely necessary. Why did he say so? Because the Little Western Paradise's techniques also came from the ancient world. The human techniques of the ancient world could not be cultivated to become a demigod. Therefore, when many demigod descendants were born, they would need to cultivate special techniques and special treasures. Therefore, the Naga Empire's treasures were very important. With the treasures of the Naga Empire, it was possible to cultivate these demigod descendants into real demigods. Yao Qi planned ahead. Before the demigod clan was born on a large scale, she had already started to plan the future growth of these descendants. Therefore, if it was him, in other words, if he didn't devour the Voidcrack fire, he wouldn't be able to win the Doomsday battle. Even if it was a trap, Yang Dingtian would still jump in. At the crucial moment, Yang Dingtian had the temperament to take a gamble and take a gamble. Yao Qi was the same. He also dared to take the risk. However, he was dead. I will jump down. Yang Dingtian gave a very affirmative answer. Jia stared at Yang Dingtian for a long time before turning her head away. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and coldly said, "This is the last time I will cry. Let's go back. We need to stabilize the situation before the news of his death spreads, and before the world descends into chaos," Yang Dingtian said. After that, the two of them rode on their secret mounts and returned to Indu as fast as they could. Along the way, Yang Dingtian kept thinking about a problem. If Yao Qi wasn't so smart and fell into the first trap, he would have died after devouring the dark crystal. Then, when the void crack fire door opened, he would definitely enter and jump into the flames. He would also die. Could it be that Yongxi also thought of this? He already knew this, but he didn't say anything. Perhaps, in order to get rid of Yao Qi, he didn't care about sacrificing Yang Dingtian? Thinking of this, Yang Dingtian felt a chill on his back. He instinctively hugged his arms. At this moment, Yongxi was still lying on the bed. However, he was in a human's body now. Moreover, his body was very old. His hair and beard were all white. It was a stark contrast to Wu Yu's beauty. He was heavily injured. Almost his entire body was covered with wounds. When he saw Yang Dingtian and Jia enter, he was slightly stunned. He instinctively looked behind him. "Yao Qi is dead," Yang Dingtian said. Yongxi, who was on the verge of death, was completely stunned. Puff! Then, he suddenly spat out a stream of blood. His entire face suddenly turned red. His entire body began to tremble violently. Immediately, the great warlock rushed forward and pressed Yongxi's body tightly, desperately suppressing the blood in his body. After a moment of silence, murky tears fell from Yongxi's eyes. What did this mean? Crocodile tears? I wanted to kill him. Yongxi's lips trembled. But that was for the public. When he died, I felt a stabbing pain in my heart. That was for the public. We were master and disciple, but we were actually father and son. He imprisoned me for the sake of the public. When I committed suicide, he almost went crazy and tried to stop me. That was for the public. Then Yongxi didn't speak anymore. Yang Dingtian said, You guessed that he would die? Yongxi was silent for a long time. He shook his head and said, I don't know. Yang Dingtian said, What do you mean? Yongxi said, In my mind, the void-splitting fire was at the bottom of the endless Yong Peak. I directly jumped down and successfully swallowed it. Because in the meditation illusion that the speechless clan created for me, I entered the void boundary like this. That was how I obtained the void-splitting fire. Yang Dingtian understood. The source of this trap came from the speechless clan. At that time, in order to persuade Yongxi to change his strategy, they pulled him into a deep meditation. They let him experience the Western Kingdom's domination of the world. He was the strongest god, but he was the only one in the world. It was this extremely realistic dream that made Yongxi give up the strategy of the Fox clan's domination. However, the speechless clan still set up a double insurance. If Yongxi was still stubborn, he would definitely swallow the void-splitting fire. Yongxi would die in that terrifying and transparent flame. Therefore, this trap was set up by the speechless clan for Yongxi. However, they didn't expect that it would kill Yao Qi in the end. I wanted to kill Yao Qi. I did everything I could to kill Yao Qi. Yongxi sighed. However, I really didn't expect to die like this. Yang Dingtian was silent. He looked out the window. But it's good that he's dead. It's good that he's dead. Yongxi sighed. If he's dead, the Fox clan won't be destroyed. This world won't be destroyed. Yes, Yao Qi's death was a good thing. No matter how tragic and shocking it was still a good thing. Yongxi suddenly said, Yang Dingtian, where do you think this little Western paradise came from? Yang Dingtian was stunned. Wasn't this an independent plane? Wasn't it a part of the chaotic world for a long time? Yongxi said, Use your imagination and think about it. How did the little Western paradise come about? Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and started to recall the little Western paradise. Continuous mountains floated in the air. Pieces of land also floated in the air. Every piece of land felt like it was being torn apart. He looked up and saw the map of the little western paradise on the wall. It was 20 to 30,000 miles wide. It wasn't small at all. But when the land of the world was pieced together, only half of it was left. That was because half of the space was empty. Moreover, the edges of the land seemed to fit together. In other words, a long time ago, this was a complete piece of land. It was just that many pieces had been torn apart. Then, Yang Dingtian recalled that in the Forbidden Continent, the hard rock plains and the lava plains were both 2 to 300,000 miles wide. And the ocean in the third stage was millions of miles wide. In other words, the ocean and the land were millions of miles wide. The land of this world was 300,000 miles wide. In terms of area, it was about 22.5 billion square kilometers. It was 150 times the size of Earth. How big was the chaotic world now? The East continent was less than 20 million square kilometers. The Middle continent was 100 million square kilometers. The West continent was 40 million square kilometers. The Dongli grassland was 30 million square kilometers. The Ghost Hellland was 15 million square kilometers. The Little Western Paradise was 30 to 40 million square kilometers of land. The Demon Realm was 20 million square kilometers. The Land of Chaos was a few million square kilometers. The Yin-Yang Mirror was tens of millions square kilometers. The North was a world of ice and snow, more than 100 million square kilometers. The Land of Extreme South was tens of millions square kilometers. All the land added together was only about 500 million square kilometers. Then, where did the remaining 20 billion square kilometers of land go? Of course, there were still many unknown lands. But more than 90% of the land had disappeared. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian thought of a terrifying possibility. Yang, she said, Yang Dingtian, you are right. The Little Western Paradise was torn apart by the Great Cataclysm 10,000 years ago. That great cataclysm destroyed countless lands, mountains and rivers. And the Little Western Paradise was at the edge of destruction. So even though it was torn apart, it barely survived. But it was left alone in a special environment. You might want to know where the rest of the land has gone to. Yang Dingtian nodded. Yang, she said, did you see the void border? I saw it. Yang Dingtian said. That is, a world that has been completely destroyed has become an extremely terrifying dark matter. Moreover, this dark matter has been constantly spreading, constantly devouring the land that is full of vitality. So they were isolated in another plane of existence. That is why the land of our primal chaos world was preserved. Yang, she said, these void borders are the result of countless great cataclysms. This world definitely did not experience just one great cataclysm, but many. But perhaps the first great cataclysm was caused by the extremely powerful dragon clan. And Naga was only the last overlord of the primal chaos world. Yao Qi tried to make the Fox clan the new overlord. Every overlord demanded energy from the primal chaos world, causing the entire world to be destroyed. Now less than 10% of our primal chaos world is left. If we let the Fox clan walk the path of the previous overlords, the entire primal chaos world will be destroyed. Yang Dingtian was deeply shocked. He felt that this should be the truth of the world. Now less than 10% of the primal chaos world was left. The Little Western Paradise world was the result of the last great cataclysm. Yang, she said, the Silent Clan calculated that the great cataclysm 10,000 years ago might have caused the destruction of more than 1 billion square miles of land. If there is another great cataclysm, then our entire world will only be left with the void border and the dark matter. This world will become a world of death. Yang, she sighed and said, in order to stop the destruction of this world, although I see Yao Qi as my own son, but I have to think of a way to kill him, because his existence can really give birth to the Fox clan's hegemony. Yang Dingtian nodded. In fact, if Yao Qi did not die, Yang Dingtian could not find a way to escape. Of course, the final plan was to release the Naga, but the ancient sea beasts were afraid of the Naga, and the Yikshas were afraid of the Naga. Because they had been ruled by the Naga for generations, they had the genes to fear the Naga. The Fox clan and the Naga had nothing to do with each other. Therefore, Yao Qi would not be afraid of the Naga. Shuang'er's battle strength was far inferior to Yao Qi's. She was invincible in another way. She could not be killed or injured. Yongxi asked, Yang Dingtian, what do you plan to do next? Yang Dingtian said, we are the only two great sages of the Little Western Paradise. For hundreds of years, you have controlled Indu and almost half of the tribes. I am in charge of contacting the Shadow Spear tribe. We should be able to calm the situation in the Little Western Paradise. Also, Yao Qi died for the Void Fire, which should be a huge setback to his hegemony strategy. Now the 9 tribes' ambitions have not been completely ignited, so we still have time to change the direction. It should not be a problem to completely calm the Little Western Paradise. Also, before he died, Yao Qi used the recovery jade to record his last words. He entrusted the Little Western Paradise to the two of us. Yongxi said, Yao Li of the Silver Moon clan will be very troublesome. He is the most passionate about hegemony strategy. Yang Dingtian said, let's deal with the 7 tribes first, then think of a way to deal with Yao Li. Maybe I can give it a try. Yongxi said, let's not waste time. Let's start now. I will go and meet the counselors and tribe leaders who were originally loyal to me. You go and meet the Shadow Spear tribe leader. Before meeting Yang Dingtian, Yao Wrath II of the Shadow Spear tribe received the news of Yao Qi's death from Jia. He did not feel sad at all. He only frowned and was filled with unhappiness. He had invested so much in Yao Qi. Now Yao Qi was dead before he even received any returns. Of course, he was filled with hatred. Yang Dingtian voiced out his opinion and said, Chairman Yao Qi asked me and Great Sage Yongxi to oversee the Little Western Paradise's matters and pacify the entire Little Western Paradise's situation. I am here to request for Patriarch Yao Nu's support. Yao Wrath II looked at Yang Dingtian for a long time. Suddenly he said, Mr. Jiang Shang, of course I can support you. But you have to go one step further. Don't be a great sage anymore. Just be the chairman and marry both of my daughters. Then, before Yongxi appears in public, make him disappear completely. Instantly, Yang Dingtian was stunned. Yao Wrath II wanted him to be the chairman and kill Yongxi. Chapter 764. Yang Dingtian becoming the speaker? What kind of joke was this? He came to Little Western Paradise for 2 reasons. First, to find Yao Rao and her son. Second, for the space-splitting fire. Next, he had to lead the Tiando League army and prepare for the arrival of the world-destroying army. How would he have the time to be the speaker in Little Western Paradise? Yao Qi could be the speaker, but Yang Dingtian couldn't. Yao Qi could get rid of Demon Wrath II's control and could even imprison her biggest political backer, Yongxi. If Yang Dingtian had truly lost his mind due to greed and became the chairman, he would be nothing more than a puppet. In this regard, Yang Dingtian was more realistic than Yao Qi. He had to fight for any position on his own. It definitely couldn't be someone else's charity. Yang Dingtian was from the Silent Tribe. It was natural for him to become a great sage. If he really wanted to become the chairman, this transcendent identity would disappear completely amidst the countless conflicts of interest. But reject directly? It was also impossible. If he directly refused, then it would mean that the previous investment of Shadow Spear Clan's Demon's Wrath II would all go down the drain, and he would certainly fly into a rage out of humiliation. At that time, even if he wanted to successfully escape, it would be very difficult. After all, he had to take Yao Rao and her son with him. Yang Dingtian, leader Demon Wrath, after the speaker's death, won't there be another election? Demon Wrath said, no, there can only be one election every 100 years. If the chairman were to die in an accident during his term of office, the 9 tribes would elect an acting chairman. This happened once before. In the end, the former speaker acted as the acting speaker for the remaining 30 years. Yang Dingtian. So the great sage Yongxi has a high chance of getting this position. Demon Wrath said, his life is in our hands now. He hasn't appeared in public. We can kill him anytime. Also, we have a substitute for Yongxi. You're also a great sage. You have a huge reputation among the high nobles. You can totally be the acting speaker. Yang Dingtian. But I'm only from the Silent Tribe. You can become a great sage. But once you become a chairman, your transcendent status will disappear. Yongxi's expression changed as he said, Sir Jiangshang, you might not know how much I've invested in Yao Qi. Now that he's dead, don't tell me that all my previous investments have gone to waste? Can I tell you this? Let Yongxi take the throne. That's impossible. That would be forcing me to turn hostile. You should know that the current saintess and the only demigod descendant are my daughter and grandson. Then, Yongxi said resolutely, if you want my support, you have to be the chairman. Yang Dingtian immediately fell silent. It was very obvious that the demon fury too in front of him absolutely could not be persuaded with words. It could only be a naked benefit. Suddenly, another idea popped up in Yang Dingtian's mind. It could even be said that his imagination was running wild. Sir Yao Nu, I have an idea. Yang Dingtian said. Still let Master Yongxi be the acting speaker, but let your daughter Jia be his assistant speaker. In a few decades, let Jia become the Grand Inquisitor, and in 100 or 200 years, let Jia run for the new speaker. The demon fury too suddenly stopped breathing. This was an even more direct stimulus to his own interests. Although it would take 100 or even 200 years for Jia to become the speaker. But for the Demon Fox clan, 100 or 200 years was not a very long time. Although Jia's political talent was far inferior to Yao Qi's, she was still better than most people, even compared to the previous speakers. Moreover, she was now the wife of the great sage Jiang Shang. She was no longer the princess of the Shadow Spear clan. She could totally run for the election. If she could get Yongxi's approval, coupled with the fact that she was the sister of the Saintess, the support of the Shadow Spear clan, and the support of the great sage Jiang Shang, it was quite possible for her to become the speaker after 100 years. After all, Little Western Paradise had already had 2 speakers. It would not be strange for a third one to appear. Yang Dingtian continued. Chief Yao Nu, if you want Jia to run for the new speaker after 100 years, then the Little Western Paradise's policy may still be on the path of Master Yongxi. Art and culture, not power and force. After all, as a woman, Jia's natural disposition in expansion and martial arts is not enough. Yao Nu too thought about it and nodded instinctively. Then he said, Jia is a counselor. If Yongxi agrees to let Jia be his only assistant, then I can consider supporting Yongxi as the acting speaker. Yang Dingtian said, Okay, I'll talk to Master Yongxi. Before talking to Yongxi, Yang Dingtian found Jia. Yao Qi's death was a huge blow to Jia. Yao Qi was her idol. She was her political sustenance, as well as the hope of the Demon Fox clan. Furthermore, he was her ideal husband. For Yao Qi's cause, she even sacrificed her chastity. From Yao Qi's second wife, she became Jiang Shang's wife. Of course, she personally caused her husband Jiang Shang to be paralyzed and disabled. Jia had made such a huge sacrifice. With Yao Qi's death, all her sacrifices were in vain. So at this moment, she was completely disheartened. When Yang Dingtian saw her again, her perfect image was gone. His clothes were also wrinkled. Her cloud-like hair was a bit messy. Even her beautiful face had become thinner. Her gem-like eyes also seemed a little dim. Her lips were cracked and had lost their alluring luster. When she saw Yang Dingtian come in, she didn't react at all. Even when she saw Yang Dingtian walk in with his legs intact, she wasn't surprised. After all, he had always pretended to be paralyzed. Right now, she was standing in front of Yao Qi's portrait in a daze. Go out. I want to be alone, Jia said. Jia said, our marriage was fake in the first place. You and I hated each other. Now that Yao Qi is dead, you and I can be free. Yang Dingtian said, I just talked to your father. He said that the condition for supporting Yongxi's acting speaker is for you to be the speaker's assistant. After a few decades, you can save the great judge. After 100 years, you can run for speaker. Jia shook her head and said, as the daughter of the Shadow Spear clan leader, I have no right to run for speaker. You're no longer the princess of the Shadow Spear clan. You're the wife of the great sage Jiang Shang, Yang Dingtian said. Suddenly, there was some fluctuation in Jia's eyes. She was a person with strong political ambitions. However, she had placed all her ambitions on Yao Qi. Now that Yao Qi was dead, she had lost all her goals. Now Yang Dingtian had given her an even bigger goal. As the speaker, she would become the third speaker in the history of Little Western Paradise. Yang Dingtian said, "However, as a woman, your image goes against martial arts. So you can only walk the path of peace, art and culture. This is in line with Yongxi's formation." Jia sneered sarcastically. "So you want the Fox clan to continue living in a drunken stupor and walk towards destruction in the end, right?" Yang Dingtian said, "Perhaps you'll have to consider your wisdom and Yongxi's wisdom." Jia continued to look at Yao Qi's portrait on the wall and said, "I'll give it a try. My chances of running for speaker in 100 years are very slim. At that time, it'll be even more unstable than when Yao Qi takes the position. Moreover, I want to completely cut off my relationship with the Shadow Spear clan. My identity as your wife must be extremely prominent. If necessary, I'll even suppress the interests of the Shadow Spear clan to show my isolation." Yang Dingtian smiled, but didn't want to discuss politics with her. He said directly, "All right, then I'll go and talk to Yongxi." When he saw Yongxi again, he was sitting in a wheelchair. "Yao Ru too can support you as the acting speaker, but he wants his daughter Jia to be your only assistant speaker. After a few decades, she'll take up the position of great judge. After 100 years, or 200 years, she'll run for speaker," Yang Dingtian said. Yongxi nodded and said, "All right, I'll do it." Yang Dingtian said worriedly, "Yongxi, I'm worried about Jia. She's very ambitious and has the same ideals as Yao Qi. When she becomes speaker in the future, will she walk the same path as Yao Qi?" Yongxi said, "She's very smart and has great political talent. However, she's not Yao Qi." Instead of saying that she has the same ideals as Yao Qi and has the same strategy, it's better to say that she's just following Yao Qi. Now that Yao Qi is dead, I have enough time to change her mind. She isn't Yao Qi after all," Yang Dingtian said. "Now that you've formed an alliance with Yao Ru too, you can control at least 5 clans, including Indu. The only ones left are the original 4 clans of the Righteous Alliance. Although 2 of them left the Righteous Alliance, they're still following Yao Ru of the Silver Moon clan." Yongxi said, "Of the 4 clans of the Righteous Alliance, 2 of them aren't a problem because Yao Li betrayed the Silver Moon clan. So, only the Silver Moon clan and their absolute ally, the Oceanic clan, are left. So the next target to persuade is Yao Li's clan leader." Persuading Yao Li was very difficult. In the past, Yao Li had been against Yongxi's strategy. He'd always admired the Fox clan's dream of ruling the world. So he'd let go of his son and declared his loyalty to Yao Qi. Now, not long after he'd pledged his loyalty, Yao Qi was already dead, and Little Western Paradise's direction had turned to art and culture. Obviously, he'd go into a frenzied state of hostility again. Plus, his willpower was extremely firm. It was very difficult to persuade him. "I'll try," Yang Dingtian said. Yongxi said, "It's very dangerous for you to go. He might even think that you're the one who killed Yao Qi. Maybe he'll kill you." Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, "He won't. Because the silver dragon blood crystal on me came from Yao Li, his proudest son. Plus, he could only persuade Yao Li. He couldn't use force to persuade him. That was because Yao Qi had already started a great battle, and she had won. But the victory wasn't a victory in battle. It was Yao Li's clan leader's surrender. It was impossible to start another war now. The several great clans of the Western Paradise were filled with laziness and disgust when it came to war. If they really fought, they might not be the Righteous Alliance's match. 2 days later, Yang Dingtian entered the Silver Moon clan and met Yao Li. He took out Jia's reflection jade. It recorded the entire process of Yao Qi's death and his last words. After reading it, Yao Li was shocked. It was as if Yao Li had been struck by lightning. He stared at the reflection jade in disbelief. How could it be? How could it be? He'd just made up his mind to surrender to Yao Qi and work with him to rule the chaotic world. How could Yao Qi die just like that? How could it be? Then, he seemed to have lost all his strength. He stumbled and took a few steps back. He sat on the chair and took in deep breaths. He had experienced this kind of thunderbolt from the blue twice. The first time was when he heard that his son Yao Li had died in Yao Qi's hands. The second time was now when he heard about Yao Qi's death. The enemy who killed his son was dead. The impact was no less than the first time. He even felt that his dream of ruling the Fox clan was about to be destroyed. He'd lost all hope. It's you? It's you. Suddenly, Yao Li stood up and pointed at Yang Dingtian. I know who you are. You're not Jiang Shang from the Speechless clan. You're Yang Dingtian the human. It was you and Yong Shi who conspired to kill Chairman Yao Qi and destroy the hope of the demonic foxes. Then, Yao Li's face was cold. Now you dare to come and try to persuade me to support Yong Shi? Dream on. I won't kill you. But I'll tell you who you are and how you and Yong Shi killed Chairman Yao Qi. Then, I'll execute you in public during the Great Trial Conference. Then, he waved his hand and was about to order Yang Dingtian to be arrested and sent to the Great Trial Conference of the 9 clans with Yong Shi. He had to make the punishment clear and seek justice for Yao Qi. This person was hard to persuade. Unless he had the same goal, it was impossible to change his mind. Yang Dingtian let out a deep sigh and said, Yao Li clan head, your son, Yao Li, chose to give up on reincarnation before he died. He handed the silver dragon blood crystal to me. Therefore, I am able to transform into the appearance of the silent race. What? Yao Li was shocked and looked at Yang Dingtian in disbelief. Afterward, he quickly grabbed Yang Dingtian's arm, and a surge of energy surged into his body to identify the silver dragon energy in his body. Yang Dingtian completely released his energy sea and let the silver dragon blood crystal's energy fill his Xian meridians, allowing Yao Li to identify it. That's right. It was Yao Li's silver dragon blood crystal. That's right. It was that special energy. Yao Li's heart was in a mess. To the Fox clan, the body wasn't the core, nor was the soul. The silver dragon blood crystal was the core. That was because the Little Western Paradise's totem was the source of the fallen silver dragon's power. Fine. After a long time, Yao Li looked like he had aged countless years. Tears flowed down his face. Do whatever you want. I can't stop you, but don't expect me to agree to obey you. My Silver Moon clan will withdraw from the 9 clans and become independent of the Great Trial Conference. I'll close my door and continue my martial arts dream. Go. I don't want to see you anymore. A few hours later, Yang Dingtian left. The Little Western Paradise's situation was settled. Chapter 765. Among the 9 tribes, even Yao Li from the Silver Moon race didn't object. Hence, the alliance against Yong Shi was officially dissolved. Even the Sea Freak race supported Yong Shi as the acting speaker. Not everyone was as resolute and courageous as Yao Li. Hence, even the Oceanic race didn't suggest leaving the 9 tribes. Hence, after Yao Li from the Silver Moon race gave up, the leaders of the remaining 8 tribes unanimously agreed to let the great sage Yong Shi be the acting speaker. After the leaders of the 9 tribes were all settled, they held another tribe meeting. During the meeting, Jia announced the death of Speaker Yao Qi to all the members. She also announced Yao Qi's last words on the jade. Only then did the top leaders of this world know about Yao Qi's death. A few days later, the news of Yao Qi's death spread throughout the entire Little Western Paradise. Also, the acting speaker Yong Shi and the tribal alliance gave Speaker Yao Qi an unparalleled reputation. Speaker Yao Qi was unfortunately swallowed by the abyss fire at the void border for the future of the Fox race, and to find the ruins of the Naga Empire. He was born a noble and died a glorious death. Even all the high nobles of the 9 tribes observed a moment of silence for Speaker Yao Qi. All the cities and tribes in Little Western Paradise stopped all entertainment for 7 days. Also from now on, Yao Qi's death anniversary would be designated as Yao Qi's Day. Also, when the Fox nobles gave birth to newborns in the future, it was best to avoid the word Yao. Anyway, Yao Qi's death was a glorious one. Of course, some were sad and some were glad about Yao Qi's death. In fact, most of the high nobles of the 9 tribes heaved a sigh of relief. They couldn't object to Yao Qi's proposal. Actually, they were against it in their hearts. Wasn't it good to live a comfortable life? Anyway, they already had endless wealth. It was so troublesome and tiring to fight for supremacy. Fighting for supremacy meant fighting. It meant people dying. Also, Yao Qi was prepared to monopolize the right to give birth to demigods. This made the high nobles very wary, because if that happened, many high nobles' survival would be in Yao Qi's hands. Of course, they didn't like this. Plus, Yao Qi's great talent and strategic vision gave them a lot of pressure. The leader was a strong leader and the chairman. If the chairman was strong, the patriarchs would naturally be weak. Therefore, they naturally liked a gentle and knowledgeable elder like Yongxi. Drinking wine and dancing as usual was a good day. Following a chairman like Yao Qi was not easy at all. Not everyone was a masochist like Yao Li. After Yongxi became the chairman, Jia officially announced that she was leaving the Shadowspear clan. Furthermore, he had set his identity in Indu. From now on, she was a high noble of Silver City. She no longer had any inheritance rights to the Shadowspear race. On the surface, she no longer had any direct inheritance with Monster Wrath II. Immediately after, the Alliance Tribe Council announced the great virtuous master Jiang Shang was paralyzed due to the assassination attempt. In order to better take care of the great virtuous master, Jia officially married Mr. Jiang Shang. If it was before, Mr. Jiang Shang would definitely receive a lot of reactions and disappoint many demon fox nobles. However, at this time, Jiang Shang's body was heavily injured, and Jia was married to him. Both of them received great praise. This was especially true for Jia. Many fox nobles felt that Jia possessed extraordinary love and wisdom. Of course, Yongxi would not directly accept Jia as the chairman's assistant. He still needed her to increase her reputation and let her handle many related matters. Then, he would officially make Jia the chairman's assistant. Currently, Jia's identity was the wife of the great virtuous master. She was also at the top of the demon fox nobles. In short, with the efforts of Yongxi and Yang Dingtian, these two like-minded individuals, they had finally stabilized the Little Western Paradise's precarious situation. From then on, Little Western Paradise once again embarked on the path of art and culture. The high nobles went further and further down the path of corruption. The threat they posed to the entire human world became smaller and smaller. This day, Yang Dingtian officially said goodbye to Yongxi. He was going to bring Yao Rao and her son back to the human world. Of course, his departure was semi-public and semi-secret, because he did say that he was going to the human world for a civilization inspection. However, only Yongxi knew that he was going to bring Yao Rao and Yang Yi away. Yongxi was still sitting in the wheelchair. He looked at Yang Dingtian reluctantly and said, "Can't you stay for a while longer? I really need you. Little Western Paradise needs you too." Yang Dingtian pushed him and walked on the tree-lined path of the Silver Palace. He said, "The situation in the human world is still quite urgent. I do have many things to do." Yongxi said, "Then what are you going to do about the void-splitting fire?" Yang Dingtian said, "It's my fate if I get it, and it's my fortune if I don't. What's mine will be mine in the end. What's not mine can't be forced." Yao Qi is the best example. Yongxi sighed and said, "It's a pity that I can't give you more information about the void-splitting fire. In fact, I'm already a little afraid of this word. I really hope that this word will be erased from my mind in the future." Yang Dingtian stopped and then turned around. He pushed Yongxi back into the hall and said, "All right, I'll say goodbye to you here. I'll take Yao Rao and her son back. Little Western Paradise is officially in your hands." Yongxi reached out his skinny hand and grabbed Yang Dingtian. He said emotionally, "Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, I won't let the Fox Demon clan follow in the footsteps of the Naga clan. I won't let the Naga clan walk the path of destruction." Yang Dingtian bowed deeply and said, "Then, Teacher Yongxi, I'll take my leave." Yongxi waved his hand and said, "Remember, when you encounter something difficult, come to Little Western Paradise. You're not only the leader of the human world, you're also the great teacher of Little Western Paradise. You're my confidant and friend. You always will be." "I will. Goodbye," Yang Dingtian said. "Goodbye." Yongxi's eyes twitched slightly. He raised his head and closed his eyes with a sigh. Then, He reached out his hand to turn the wheelchair and returned to his bedroom. But this wasn't a self-service wheelchair. The wheels were small and his hand couldn't reach it. He shouldn't have sat in a wheelchair before. He seemed to be very familiar with it. Yang Dingtian turned around and left. Yongxi's voice came from behind. Child, before you leave, you should say goodbye to Jia. Also, I've already transferred Yao Rao and her son to the Pegasus silver carriage. You can take them away at any time. Okay, Yang Dingtian said. Jia was sorting out the documents at this time. Yang Dingtian said, I'm going to the human world. As I said before, I'm very curious about the human civilization. It would be better if I can get some enlightenment. Jia was startled and said, I know. Do you need us to send experts to protect you? Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, No need. There aren't many people in the human world who can hurt me. Jia wanted to say, Isn't your Sea of Qi destroyed? But this topic didn't have much meaning at this time. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say it. Then I won't send you off. Goodbye. Jia said. Goodbye. Yang Dingtian said. Then, Yang Dingtian left Jia's room and went to the east gate of the Silver Palace. Yao Rao's secret silver carriage was there. It had the highest pass issued by Yongxi. After Yao Qi's death, Yongxi took the highest authority in the silver capital in the shortest time possible. Even the experts who were loyal to Yao Qi and those who participated in Yongxi's imprisonment didn't have too many obstacles and became loyal to Yongxi again. The high-level experts in Little Western Paradise, especially in the silver capital, all had a very mature political attitude. To put it in a very vulgar way, they firmly supported the central government and supported whoever was in the central government. And Yang Dingtian, as the great sage, had power second only to Yongxi in the Silver Palace. Therefore, when he left the Silver Palace, not only was there no one to stop him, all the demon fox warriors that he passed all bowed to him. Outside the Silver Palace, Yang Dingtian boarded the carriage. At this time, Yao Rao was filled with unease. After Yao Qi's death, Yao Rao was one of the most uneasy people, because she knew that her father was a rare commodity worth hoarding, and she couldn't rely on him anymore. So she didn't even know what was going to happen next. Moreover, she was a mother. She was Yang Yi's heaven and earth. She would do anything to protect her child. The moment Yang Dingtian entered the carriage, Yao Rao's complexion suddenly changed. Then she tightly hugged Yang Yi in her bosom, and then said with a faint smile, Mr. Jiangshang, where are you taking us? At this time, Yang Dingtian was like a little bird in her arms. He opened his small hands and threw himself at Yang Dingtian, saying sweetly, Daddy, Daddy. Yang Dingtian suddenly hugged him, and then hugged Yao Rao, who had lost a lot of weight. He hugged her tightly and greedily sniffed the mother and son's scent. He said in a trembling voice, Okay, my darling, we are going home. Daddy is bringing you home. Big brother Yang Li, little sister Yang Qin misses you a lot. Grandma also misses you. Yao Rao was stunned at first. Then hearing Yang Dingtian's familiar voice, she was completely stunned. As if she was in a dream, Yao Rao looked at Yang Dingtian in disbelief. After a long time, she said in a trembling voice, Child, am I not dreaming? Is it really you? Is it really you? She actually called Yang Dingtian a child. Yes, it's me. Yang Dingtian kissed Yao Rao's ear. Then he pinched Yao Rao's waist with practiced movements. Suddenly, Yao Rao's eyes were brimming with tears. She firmly kissed Yang Dingtian's mouth and said in a trembling voice, My child, my little boy. From this moment on, I really love you. Not only will I be your little woman for your whole life, I will love you like yin yang. At the same time, Jia, who was sitting behind the big table, suddenly stroked her belly. She softly sighed, then said with a self-deprecating smile, Since he doesn't care, why should I tell him? There is no need to act like a child. Baby, from now on you're my child. At the same time, deep in the dungeon, a man and a woman were kissing. The woman was as beautiful as a demon, and had a figure that was like the ups and downs of a mountain. Yongxi was still sitting on the wheelchair. This woman was lying on his lap, raising her beautiful face and kissing him. Yongxi looked very old, and this woman looked so peerlessly beautiful. She was Wu Yu. My lover, does it hurt? Wu Yu asked. Yongxi said, this is nothing to me. More than 200 years ago, I was paralyzed in a wheelchair from the time I was born until I was 23 years old. So now, I feel incomparably natural, there is no discomfort at all. Wu Yu said, just like this, we are letting Yang Dingtian go. Yongxi said, yes, we are letting him go. Wu Yu said, if Dongli can't do it, we still need Yang Dingtian to create a demigod descendant. Why not completely imprison him? Yongxi said, Yu Ming was defeated, so Yang Dingtian has become very important again. Moreover, you have a misconception. If you imprison a sheep in a pen or in a courtyard, what is the difference? As long as you want, you can capture it at any time, right? Who can be smarter than you, except for that cheap disciple of yours? Wu Yu said, at that time, not only did you steal Yongxi's void-splitting flame, but you also let one of your souls take over his body. Didn't Yaoqi notice anything strange? Didn't he notice that his teacher Yongxi had changed into another soul 200 years ago? Yongxi said, no, because I didn't destroy Yongxi's soul. I inherited all of his memories. However, this person's schemes are too deep. I originally elected him as the new chairman, because I wanted to continue to indirectly control the Fox Demon clan through him. Who would have thought that he would be so decisive and kill me, and directly imprison me? This person is really a tyrant, I have seen in my life. Fortunately, I was able to make use of his greatest strength, as well as his greatest weakness, and finally killed him. Otherwise, it would be hard to say who would win. Wu Yu raised her head and said coquettishly, then can you tell me what the Naga Empire's treasure looks like? Yongxi pinched her face and said, idiot, what treasure of the Naga Empire? It's just a rumor that I purposely spread. Otherwise, Yaoqi wouldn't be so obsessed with the void-splitting flame, and it wouldn't be so easy for me to kill him. After all, the cultivation of this body that I took over was relatively weak. Wu Yu said, now, that Earthling Wentian's soul has taken over the Underworld Empire. Your soul has taken over the Little Western Paradise. Dongli is about to devour the real void-splitting flame, and then make Queen Hai Xian go into heat, and take over the Naga Empire. We already have the 3 strongest planes in the chaotic world. Can we defeat the god of chaos? Yongxi shook his head and sighed. Baby, I don't know. But what I know is that if Yaoqi can gamble, so can I. I would rather die together with him. I would rather destroy the world and fight to the end. That's right. This Yongxi was the other soul clone of the Demon King Wentian, the one that wasn't from Earth. The Demon King Wentian wrote very clearly that before the age of 23, Wentian was paralyzed in bed. Suddenly one day, he completely recovered, and then he rose up. Because the Earthling's soul had transmigrated into his body had 2 souls. Chapter 766. Wentian's transmigration was also different from Yang Dingtian's. Yang Dingtian's entire body was transmigrated while Wentian's soul possessed the body. Hence, there were 2 souls in a single body. And once 2 souls occupied the same body, the mental reaction would be extremely complicated. Because unlike Dongfang Minmi who was in Yang Dingtian's mind, and unlike Queen Poisa who was in Yang Dingtian's mind, they were merely lodging. And the 2 souls in Wentian's body were the owners of the body. Therefore, not only were their 2 souls fused together, but there would also be a change in the fusion of the 2 souls, evolving into a third mixed personality. 200 years ago, Yongxi didn't manage to defeat his own desires, and went to search for the void-rending flame. However, he met Wentian and tragedy befell him. Not only did he lose the void-rending flame, he also lost his own body. In other words, before the previous world-ending war truly began, Wentian was already prepared for failure. He was already planning for the next world-ending war to defeat the primal chaos god. In his chess game, the Earthling Wentian's soul was in charge of the Underworld Empire. The paralyzed Wentian's soul was in charge of the powerful Little Western Paradise. As for Wu Yuming, she was in charge of the human countries in the underworld. Dongli was in charge of the Snakeman Empire that was about to rise. It could be said that once Wentian succeeded, he would control the ultimate authority of the entire underworld. After that, He would lead a few planes to fight against the primal chaos god, completely challenging his own destiny. Hence, Wentian was a terrifying strategist. And now, he had already succeeded by half. The Underworld Empire and Little Western Paradise were both under his control. As for Netherworld, she had already failed. Dongli was on the verge of success. If there were no accidents, he would obtain the void-rending flame and begin his conquest of Queen Hai Exan, as well as the Snakeman Empire. Li Ming and that lover of yours were in charge of the last step of your world-ending plan. Did they succeed? Wu Yu asked. What do you mean, my lover? Yongxi caressed Wu Yu's face and said, I only have you as my lover. Nihility Piaoling is the lover of that bookworm from Earth. I don't have much interest in her. Who are you trying to fool? Wu Qiong said in a sweet voice. Maybe you're a dirty person who purposely used the name of two souls to play with another woman. In all honesty, I've never touched you, nor have I touched her. Yongxi was speechless. After that, Yongxi sighed. I don't know if Li Ming and Piaoling's plan will succeed or not. But when they succeed, the world-ending war will truly begin. The chess game that I've been plotting for 200 years will truly begin. Wu Yu gently kissed Yongxi's face and said, I've been unhappy with this world for a very long time. Then Wu Yu suddenly asked, What do you plan to do about Netherworld? Yongxi sighed and didn't say anything. Yang Dingtian didn't think about anything in his mind. He just took Yaorao and Yang Yi and quickly left the Little Western Paradise. After a full day and night, he finally flew to the border of Little Western Paradise. Babies, we are going home. Yang Dingtian hugged Yaorao and her son and said softly. In front of them was the boundless sea, which seemed to be the sea shared with the human country's taboo continent. The mountain peak under their feet was the last territory of Little Western Paradise. Yang Dingtian's legs suddenly sprung, and holding Yaorao and her son, he directly flew toward the taboo continent's sea area. Yaorao quietly laid in Yang Dingtian's bosom and looked at his face. Then, she began to be astonished to find that Yang Dingtian's face was rapidly changing. All the appearance of Silent Clan was gradually fading away, and once again changed back to Yang Dingtian's appearance. Suddenly, Yaorao let out a long sigh of relief, and couldn't help but kiss his face. Although this Yang Dingtian's face was not very handsome, but she still liked this appearance, and didn't like the appearance of Silent Clan's Jiang Shang. Yang Dingtian flew faster and faster. Soon, he entered a blurred and familiar sea area. Then he found that the whole sea and the sky began to turn upside down. So, he suspected whether he would enter the taboo continent's spiritual illusion again like before. But he didn't. As he continued to descend, he saw a bizarre space, and a faintly discernible silver door in the light and shadow of the void illusion. Yang Dingtian flew to the door and gently pushed. This huge silver door was effortlessly pushed open. Yang Dingtian brought Yaorao and her son into the skull hall. There was no one inside, and it was incomparably quiet. He couldn't help but look at the other 3 doors in the hall. There were a total of 4 doors in the skull hall. The silver door led to Little Western Paradise. The green door led to the human kingdom. Then there were 2 doors left, one was colorless, and the other was black. Which world did these 2 doors lead to? Then, Yang Dingtian's gaze fell on the green door again. He stepped forward and pushed hard, but found that it didn't move at all. The silver door of Little Western Paradise could be pushed open, but the green door of the human kingdom couldn't be pushed open from the inside. Did this mean that the skull hall was protecting the human kingdom? Unless there were humans from the outside world, people from other planes would never be able to enter the human kingdom. Just like the countless undead and Shura powerhouses in the nether plane, they couldn't come to the human kingdom. Otherwise, with the strength of the Little Western Paradise and the nether plane, the human kingdom would have been wiped out countless times. Then another problem appeared. Who was the first to enter the taboo continent's illusion, enter the skull hall, and open the door to the human kingdom for the first time? Of course, no matter who it was, Yang Dingtian now finally knew why the Nether Sea sent so many powerhouses to completely seal off the taboo continent's sea area. It was because she wanted to completely guard the entrance and exit between several worlds. Perhaps Wu Yu's mission wasn't in the Nether Sea, nor was it in Wu Yuming. but in this world's door. At this moment, the green door of the human kingdom in front of them suddenly opened quickly, and then a figure quickly entered the hall. Sir Yang Dingtian, you guys quickly go out. It seemed to be the voice of the Nether Sea's envoy, Huali. Yang Dingtian was stunned, but then he didn't think too much about it. He carried Yao Rao and Yang Yi, and quickly rushed out of the green door of the human kingdom. As if passing through a space tunnel, after a bizarre light and shadow travel, Yang Dingtian, Yao Rao and her son appeared in the sky above the Taboo Continent's sea area. This time, they had truly returned home. They had truly entered the human kingdom's plane. Carrying Yao Rao and her son, Yang Dingtian quickly flew in the direction of Cloud Sky City. After flying for 1,000 miles, he saw the experts from the Nether Sea blocking the entrance of the sea area. At this moment, there were already more than 10 people. These Nether Sea's grandmasters glanced at Yang Dingtian indifferently, without any expression, and allowed Yang Dingtian to quickly fly away. After returning to Cloud Sky City, in the entire valley, Yang Dingtian's family members fell into an unprecedented joy. Yao Rao also let go of all her reservations, and desperately hugged her master's wife, Yin Yen, Ro Muliani Qin Jiao, and even Wu Maji, whom she hated the most. Then, she hugged Yang Dingtian's babies one by one, and kissed them hard. In the past, when she was in Cloud Sky City, she only treated Yang Dingtian as her family. From now on, she was going to treat everyone here as her family. She was going to treat every child as her own. At this moment, it had already been more than 5 months since Yang Dingtian left Cloud Sky City. Almost half a year. Yang Dingtian greedily hugged each of his wives and children. Then that night, Yang Dingtian fell into complete indulgence, including Yin Yen. As soon as he returned to Cloud Sky City, he received a huge piece of good news. Yin Yen was pregnant. She was indeed pregnant. Originally, Yin Yen was worried that Debao Yangli would be jealous and unhappy. Who knew that the little guy was so excited, shouting for his younger brother or sister to come out quickly every day. This way, his team would have one more person. It would even be best if each mother gave birth to a few children. This way, he could take care of dozens of people, and he would really have a strong army. With all his wives, he indulged crazily. In the end, he hugged Yin Yen, whose belly was already big, and fell asleep. He gently stroked her belly, greedily enjoying the happiness in front of him. No matter what, he did it. He fulfilled his promise. He brought Yao Rao and Yang Yi Baobao home. The next day, Dongfang Minmi and Qin Wanqiu came together to visit. Yang Dingtian's return made them heave a long sigh of relief. They finally smiled for the first time in half a year. Dongfang Minmi hugged a thick stack of documents. He wanted to report everything that had happened in the past half a month in detail. Yang Dingtian reached out to stop them and said, "Master, I won't listen to it first. I have things on my mind that I want to think clearly. I feel that the matters in Little Western Paradise are not over yet." A trace of worry flashed in Dongfang Minmi's eyes. Then he put away the documents and said, "Okay." Yang Dingtian said, "Master, play a game of chess with me and clear my mind. Then I will start to really think. I want to think clearly about everything in Little Western Paradise." Okay. Dongfang Minmi sat down and played chess with Yang Dingtian. As for Qin Wanqiu, he sat at the side and watched the game carefully. After a game of chess, Dongfang Minmi and Qin Wanqiu left. Then Yang Dingtian went to the quiet mountain peak alone. He sat cross-legged under the vast sky and started to think in all directions for the first time. He wanted to think about everything in Little Western Paradise. Why did he have to think? Logically speaking, Little Western Paradise's current situation was perfect. Yongxi had once again taken control of Little Western Paradise, and was once again on the path of art and culture. It would not be long before it lost its threat to the human countries. That extremely terrifying Yao Qi was already dead. Moreover, he had successfully brought Yao Rao and her son back. Then why did he still feel uneasy? That's right. Yang Dingtian was very uneasy, even extremely uneasy. He felt even more uneasy than when Wu Yu went to kill Yao Li. The result of that uneasiness was that he had completely fallen into Yao Qi's trap, and almost killed Dongfang Bingling and Wu Yu. This time the uneasiness was almost 10 times, no 100 times. Then, even though he had successfully returned to Cloud Sky City, he did not feel relaxed at all. It was as if the whole world was quickly falling into the enemy's hands. Then, what was the source of this uneasiness? Yang Dingtian wanted to find this point. Was it because of Jia? This ambitious person stayed in the center of power? It was definitely not because of this. Even if Jia wanted to cause trouble, she would have to wait at least 100 or 200 years. Moreover, he believed that Yongxi could control her. Was it because of the space-splitting fire? After all, there was another important reason for going to Little Western Paradise, which was to obtain the space-splitting fire. After thinking for a long time, Yang Dingtian felt that the source of his uneasiness might be the space-splitting fire. However, Yang Dingtian still felt that it was not the case, because he was also a person who was not happy with external gains and did not feel sad for himself. He did not really care about the gains and losses of the space-splitting fire. Just as he said, it was his fortune to obtain it, but it was his fate to lose it. Then, what was the source of his uneasiness? When he was in Little Western Paradise, and even when he was quickly leaving Little Western Paradise, he did not think about this question at all. More accurately, he did not dare to think about this question. Then, why did he not dare to think about it? When did his uneasiness start? Yang Dingtian began to recall. It was like a movie frame by frame. After Yao Qi died, he negotiated with Yao Nu, Yao Li, and finally stabilized the situation in Little Western Paradise. At this time, he did not feel uneasy. Yes, I remember, I found it. It was when he was about to leave Little Western Paradise, or more accurately, when he was about to leave Silver Palace, that he started to feel uneasy. Then did it start when he said goodbye to Jia? Or when he said goodbye to Yongxi? Yes, it started when he said goodbye to Yongxi. Was it because of one of Yongxi's actions, one of his eyes, or one of his sentences? Yang Dingtian began to organize every sentence of Yongxi's. Every sentence of his was very normal, and there was no uneasiness. It was because of one of his actions. Oh, right. When Yang Dingtian turned around, Yongxi used his hands to turn the wheelchair, wanting to change direction and return to the bedroom. When he reached out his hands to turn the wheels of the wheelchair. However, this was not a real wheelchair. The wheels were very small, like a larger pram. It could not be turned on its own. At that time, Yang Dingtian felt that this action was a little abrupt. Then, it seemed to evoke a certain image in his mind, and he began to feel uneasy. Little Western Paradise did not have a real wheelchair. It was just like a pram. Yang Dingtian was very clear about this, because he had pretended to be paralyzed for many months. Yongxi's movements were very skillful, as if he had been paralyzed for a very long time, and had sat in a real wheelchair for a very long time. However, Yongxi had never been paralyzed before. The image that Yang Dingtian evoked was a scene from The Legend of the Demon King Wentian. Before Wentian was 23 years old, he was paralyzed in bed. Hence, he even designed a wheelchair for himself that he could sit in and control. Wentian had been paralyzed for a long time, and he had been in a wheelchair for a long time. Right. It was this detail that caused him to feel extremely uneasy. Instantly, Yang Dingtian trembled violently. When he thought of this scene, the uneasiness in his heart seemed to have been poked, and it instantly exploded. After that, his entire body and mind sank into a huge sense of danger. It was a feeling that all the hair on his body stood up, and all the pores on his body opened up with all their might. It was as though all the pores on his body were desperately trying to breathe. Yang Dingtian began to pant loudly. In his mind, an incomparably terrifying and absurd thought suddenly appeared. Next, Yang Dingtian racked his brains, unleashing his boundless imagination to the maximum. This Yongxi? Could it be the Demon King Wentian? Because Wentian's transmigration was a transmigration of his soul. In other words, there were two souls in one body. The Earthling's soul controlled the netherworld plane, and he even spoke a sentence in English. As for the Wentian of this primal chaos world, he was paralyzed in bed for a long time. Hence, he was constantly thinking. Hence, he possessed extremely terrifying intelligence and schemes. If not, Yao Qi wouldn't have died under his scheme. Yang Dingtian knew one thing. Before the Demon King Wentian died, he used the spatial rending flame to escape. In other words, 200 years ago, Wentian obtained the spatial rending flame. In that case, how did he obtain it? And 300 years ago, Yongxi met the speechless race. That speechless race brought him into a deep state of meditation. In the illusion of meditation, Yongxi obtained the spatial rending flame. Perhaps, this was the source of information regarding the spatial rending flame in this world. In that case, if Yongxi couldn't defeat his own physical body, he went to search for the spatial rending flame. And then he coincidentally met Wentian. Wentian snatched away his spatial rending flame, and one of the souls took over his body. Yongxi was the Demon King Wentian. Wentian snatched away his spatial rending flame, and took over his body. Yang Dingtian first assumed that this conjecture was true. In that case, once this conjecture was established, he would be able to deduce the true location of the spatial rending flame. Because the location where the Demon King Wentian and Yongxi coincidentally met was the location where the spatial rending flame bloomed. In that case, where would the Demon King Wentian and Yongxi coincidentally meet? There weren't many places here, definitely not many, because these were two completely different planes of existence. Yang Dingtian quickly took out the legend of the Demon King Wentian from his interspatial ring. He began to read carefully. 200 years ago, the Demon King Wentian was in the midst of the world-ending war. In other words, where did he go 200 years ago? What was his goal? The content recorded in the book wasn't detailed. It only said that on the eve of the world-ending war, Wentian suddenly disappeared. He had completely disappeared. Even his deputy couldn't sense his aura at all. Closing the book, Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and began to ponder. The spatial rending flame bloomed at the boundary of the void. The boundary of the void was a primal chaos world that had been destroyed a long time ago. It had been completely occupied by the dark matter. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian's mind lit up. He might know where the void crack flame had bloomed. He also knew where the Demon King Wentian met Yongxi. Chapter 767. There was only one place where humans and demonic foxes could meet. That was the common entrance of the few worlds, the Hall of Skulls. That's right. Yang Dingtian guessed that the space-splitting fire was in the Hall of Skulls. Of course, to be precise, it was in the world behind one of the two doors in the hall. There were 4 doors in the Hall of Skulls. The green door represented the current human countries, while the silver door represented the Little Western Paradise. Then, one of the colorless and black doors must represent the space-splitting border. Previously, Yang Dingtian didn't dare to make such a guess, because he didn't understand the Little Western Paradise. Now he understood that the so-called dark material lands at the space-splitting border were all dead lands after the worlds were destroyed. The Little Western Paradise was also the result of the last space-splitting war. Then, it basically proved that the 4 doors represented different stages of the worlds. However, he didn't know whether the black door represented the space-splitting border or the colorless one. But according to Yang Dingtian's conjecture, the land at the void border was completely black. Therefore, it should be a world that had completely died. Therefore, the void border should be behind the black door. Then, the void crack flame would be born there. But there was another problem. If Yongxi was Wentian, and Wentian had obtained the space-splitting fire before, and the entrance to the space-splitting fire was in the Hall of Skulls, then, why did Princess Mudan and Dongli enter the Little Western Paradise? Why did they want to cooperate with Yao Qi? Why did they want Yao Qi to give up the space-splitting fire? Dongli could just wait in the Hall of Skulls for the space-splitting fire to bloom. He didn't need Yao Qi at all. Also, Yao Qi didn't know where the real space-splitting fire was. Evil Ways only needed to work with Wu Yu to seal the 2 entrances of the Hall of Skulls. Dongli could just wait in the Hall of Skulls. Then, no one would be able to snatch the space-splitting fire. They didn't need to enter the Little Western Paradise. Unless, before this, Wentian didn't tell Dongli about the secret of the void fire. He let Mudan and Dongli enter the Little Western Paradise just to save Yongxi and help him kill Yao Qi. In that case, everything made sense. And now, it seemed that Wu Yu had known about it all along. That was because she had sealed off the entrance to the taboo continent's ocean. Moreover, when Yao Qi had the Chinese characters that he had obtained from Yang Dingtian's brain, Wu Yu had also found a Chinese character annotation book for him. Even when Yao Qi asked Wu Yu to kill Yao Li, she did. In short, Wu Yu did everything he could to lure Yao Qi into his trap. He wanted to cooperate with Yongxi Wentian to kill Yao Qi. And now, Yao Qi had been successfully killed. Wentian Eternal Life regained control of the Little Western Paradise. In that case, the suspense for Yang Dingtian now was, who would Wentian give this Voidran flame to? Would it be Mudan or Dongli? Moreover, Yao Qi had said that she obtained the Voidran flame in order to obtain the treasures of the Naga Empire. The Demon King Wentian had already obtained the Voidran flame? Then did he obtain the treasures of the Naga Empire? Or did he not have time to explore the ruins of the Naga Empire? From the looks of it, in order to let Dongli create the darkness mystic flame and conquer the Naga Empire, it was more likely that Wentian had given the Voidran flame to Dongli. Then there was another question. When would the real Voidran flame bloom? Had it bloomed already? Yang Dingtian immediately flipped through the legend of the Demon King Wentian to see if he could deduce the time when the Voidran flame would bloom from the contents. He could deduce that after the Demon King Wentian had obtained the Voidran flame and allowed one of the souls to possess Yongxi's body, he would not have entered the Little Western Paradise. This was because the Great War of Extinction was about to erupt. Therefore, looking at the records of when Wentian appeared in the world again, he could roughly deduce. In the book, Yang Dingtian noticed that the Demon King Wentian had disappeared for quite some time. When he appeared again, it was 200 years ago on the 19th of April. And today was the 15th of April. The question now was, did Wentian return to the human countries immediately after devouring the Voidran flame? Or did he hide for a few more days? But one thing was for sure. Either the Voidran flame had bloomed, or it had not bloomed yet. It would have bloomed within 4 days. Then, could he make a further deduction? At that time, the fake information that Yongxi gave Yao Qi was 79 days and 89 days. The ending number was 9. Was it Yongxi's preference, or did it represent the real information about the Voidran flame? Now, it had been almost a month since Yao Qi's death. To be precise, it had been 28 days. If the ending number of 9 days and 2 hours were real, then it meant that the Voidran flame would bloom at 3:30 in the afternoon the day after tomorrow? Of course, all of this came from Yang Dingtian's wild imagination. It was all speculation. Of course, he would not enter the Great Skull Hall based on this speculation. If he dared to take such a risk, his brain must have been flooded with water. It was very possible that the ending number of 79 days and 89 days was just Yongxi's nonsense. In short, if the Voidran flame had not bloomed yet, it could bloom every second now. Therefore, if Yang Dingtian's speculation was true, then he had to leave. He had to go to the Taboo Continent's sea region and enter the Great Skull Hall in the shortest time possible. The Taboo Continent's sea region was tens of thousands of miles away from here. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian did not even return to Cloud Sky City. He directly rode on the Demon Vulture King and flew towards the Taboo Continent's sea region. Moreover, he let the Demon Vulture King fly to a height of more than 20,000 meters. He must not let anyone see him on the way. Just like that, 12 hours later, Yang Dingtian rode on the Demon Vulture King and arrived at a height of 2,000 miles above the Taboo Continent's sea region. Then Yang Dingtian let the Demon Vulture King return. He used his invisibility Xian skill and Demon Spirit Mist cloak to fly the last 2,000 miles alone. Soon, Yang Dingtian arrived at the entrance of the Taboo Continent's sea region and saw more than a dozen experts from the Sea of Hades blocking the defensive line. Of course, this so-called blockade existed in name only for Yang Dingtian. Yang Dingtian used his invisibility Xian skill and Demon Spirit Mist cloak to pass through easily. Then, he entered the world reversal with ease and entered the Taboo Continent's spiritual illusion realm. He still entered the 6th world of the Taboo Continent and once again flew in the opposite direction in the void environment. His speed exceeded the speed of the illusory void boundary, and directly caused a logical error in the illusion realm. He successfully woke up from the illusion realm, and appeared in the skull hall. At this moment, the entire hall was still empty. Almost immediately, Yang Dingtian used his invisibility Xian skill again, and then sat down cross-legged in a corner that was difficult for ordinary people to reach. Yang Dingtian, who was sitting cross-legged while invisible, had a trace of doubt in his heart. If the entrance of the void-splitting fire was really in the skull hall, and had not bloomed yet, then Dongli should be sitting here and waiting now. Could it be that he swaggered in and waited for 2 hours before the Xian flame bloomed? He was not that awesome. Had the time for the void-splitting fire bloomed yet? Was it here or not? Did Wentian give the void-splitting fire to Dongli? In fact, was Yongxi Wentian? Yang Dingtian sat cross-legged while invisible. His heart was in a mess. He began to think hard about the logical relationship between all these things. Just like this, Yang Dingtian sat there while invisible, and did not move at all. If Dongli or the others entered this hall within 3 days, then it meant that Yang Dingtian's speculation was true. If Dongli or the others did not appear, whether it was the colorless door or the black door, it meant that Yang Dingtian's speculation was false. If that was the case, Yang Dingtian would truly lose the void-rending flame. Time passed by minute. Yang Dingtian waited quietly while invisible. 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 16 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours. An entire day and night had passed, and the skull hall was still silent. No one entered or left. Yang Dingtian could not help but become more and more suspicious of his own speculation. What the hell? Was the entrance to the void-splitting fire here or not? Could it be that it had bloomed long ago, and had been devoured by that pervert Dongli? Perhaps, that pervert Dongli had already pushed Queen Hyex in? If that was the case, it would be a complete tragedy. Just as Yang Dingtian was becoming more and more suspicious and confused, suddenly, the silver door slowly opened. 2 figures walked in. One was Princess Mu Dan, and the other was Dongli. Yang Dingtian immediately lowered his gaze. Although Princess Mu Dan's figure was incomparably graceful and moving, he did not dare to look, nor could he look, because, although Yang Dingtian was completely invisible now, his gaze was also a type of energy. The current Princess Mu Dan was already very, very powerful. She was already a half-saint. If he looked at her with his eyes, she might find out. Therefore, not only did Yang Dingtian not look, but he closed his eyes slightly. Then, he completely sealed his entire energy sea, not allowing any energy aura to leak out. Of course, he was still too careful. His invisibility technique was a true spatial isolation. Other than the undead, the living could not see or sense him at all. There are still a few hours before the door opens. You just wait here. The entrance to the human countries is blocked and guarded by the experts of the Netherworld Sea. I will guard the entrance to the Little Western Paradise's silver door. This way, no one can enter the skull hall. Princess Mu Dan said. Dongli said. Then, the silver door was opened from the outside by a demon fox. Mu Dan walked out of the silver door and entered the Little Western Paradise directly. The silver door closed again. Mu Dan was guarding outside the door, not allowing anyone to enter. Yang Dingtian let out a long sigh of relief and was filled with joy. The entrance to the space-splitting fire was indeed here. It seemed that his guess was correct. Moreover, his intelligence was not bad. He could even tell that something was wrong when Yongxi pushed the wheelchair. He had been fighting with Yao Qi for a few months. Although he had been losing, he had learned a lot. Especially when Yao Qi had deduced that Yongxi had set a trap for him from Yongxi's willing to kill Yao Li. This left a deep impression on Yang Dingtian. This time, Yang Dingtian was able to deduce that something was wrong with Yongxi's identity because of Yao Qi's contribution. Moreover, Yao Qi, who was so powerful, had died while Yongxi had survived. The probability of this happening was very low. This meant that Yongxi was definitely extremely terrifying. In the Little Western Paradise, Yang Dingtian did not even think about this problem. However, he still felt that Yongxi was not simple. Therefore, when Yongxi had moved the wheelchair slightly, he had felt a huge sense of abruptness and uneasiness. This had allowed him to discover a flaw and start to suspect his identity. In the past, Yang Dingtian would not have been so sensitive. These few months of dangerous and frightening days had given Yang Dingtian incomparable tempering. Since he had confirmed that the entrance to the space-splitting fire was here, the next step was simple. Firstly, he had the demonic spirit fog cloak, which could make him invisible. Moreover, Dongli's eyes were already blind. Therefore, when the entrance opened, he would be able to enter at the fastest speed possible. By then, even Dongli would not be able to discover his existence. Then, he would be able to obtain the second mysterious flame in the world, the space-splitting fire. Chapter 768. Dongli's eyes were still two black holes. Suddenly, he started to walk around the hall, reaching out to touch the doors, the statues, and the surrounding walls. He even started to prick his ears and sniff his nose. Yang Dingtian immediately held his breath, wishing he could seal all the pores on his body. Could it be that after being blinded, his other senses had become so powerful? Even Yang Dingtian, who was in an isolated space, could sense it? After Dongli walked one full round, as if he didn't discover anything, he walked in front of the black door, sat down, and waited quietly. It turned out that he didn't discover anything, but after being blinded, because he couldn't see, he was filled with uncertainty about the surrounding space. He needed to feel around to feel at ease. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian felt that compared to Hades, this Dongli was indeed more like an ordinary person, and not like a top expert. But thinking about it, Hades' mission was to go against God's spokesperson, and Dongli's mission was to conquer the Naga race. But to put it bluntly, he was in charge of women. It should be quite difficult to pin hopes on a man who was in charge of women to possess the inner constitution and temperament of a top expert. Even after being blinded, Dongli's weak side had already started to emerge. He had always felt that he was a very charming man. So even though he knew that he couldn't touch Princess Mudan, he still instinctively displayed his charm to her, and every time, he would try his best to let the two of them spend more time together. And after being blinded, every time he was with Mudan, he hoped that Mudan would leave quickly. Just like when Mudan left, he instinctively heaved a sigh of relief. However, Dongli actually worried too much. After being blinded, his charm in front of ordinary women was greatly reduced. But it was completely different in front of Queen Hai Xian. Because at Queen Hai Xian's level, what she cared about was a kind of smell, and not even temperament. Just like this, Dongli sat quietly in front of the black door, and Yang Dingtian sat in the corner of the hall behind him, invisible, observing him instantly, using an emotionless gaze to observe him. The entire hall fell into absolute silence. Only the sound of Dongli's breathing and heartbeat were left. Because Yang Dingtian was in an isolated space, no sound could be heard. For some reason, time seemed to have become especially long. When Yang Dingtian was waiting here alone, time didn't seem to be that slow. Moreover, it was his first time observing a person so carefully. Dongli's current state of mind was filled with uneasiness. His heart was beating very quickly, but his state of mind was also filled with excitement and anticipation. But there was also a kind of depression and disappointment. He didn't know if it was because of his blindness, but his uneasiness was his uneasiness, because he was sitting cross-legged waiting quietly. If it were any other time, it wouldn't be a problem for him to sit for a few days and nights. But at this moment, every once in a while, his ears would prick up, and he would suddenly turn his head, even though his eyes were already blind, and he couldn't see anything. But he would still wave his hand, as if there was someone behind him. Yang Dingtian believed that this was definitely not his intuition. It was uneasiness, a strong uneasiness. Just like this, time passed by minute. Dongli was waiting for the door to open, and Yang Dingtian was observing Dongli. There was a feeling that a person was locked in a special room. The walls of the room were made of glass, so the person inside couldn't see the outside. But the person outside could see the inside. And the person inside was deeply aware of this. Therefore, any emotion he had would be magnified and catalyzed. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian couldn't help but feel some sympathy for Dongli. Of course, Dongli's eyes were dug out by Yang Dingtian, so he deserved it. Another 100 times, Yang Dingtian would do the same, and even more ruthlessly. Yang Dingtian's sympathy was just an instinctive reaction of a kind person. But no matter what, in this special environment, 2 hours passed, 4 hours passed, 6 hours passed, 8 hours passed. Dongli became more and more restless, and even affected Yang Dingtian to become a little irritable. Was the door still going to be opened? Was the void-splitting fire really here? At this moment, suddenly, Yang Dingtian saw that the engravings on the black door suddenly released a ray of light. Yang Dingtian noticed that there were incomparably gorgeous engravings on the black door. It was just that they were all black, so he couldn't see them clearly. At this moment, the engravings kept lighting up, as if they were being written and engraved again. The dazzling light continued to spread throughout the entire door, causing the entire black door to shine. Yang Dingtian was stunned. Did this mean that the black door could be open, but it still needed someone to push it? However, Dongli was blind and couldn't see the light on the door at all. Moreover, he was extremely restless at this time and couldn't feel it. Yang Dingtian suddenly felt helpless. If Dongli didn't push the door open, should he push it open? This is not good. Dongli will definitely find out. Once he finds out, he will fight with his life. Although Dongli was blind, he was still a 9-star 9th grade grandmaster, which was similar to Yu Ming's cultivation. The current Yang Dingtian was probably still not a match for him. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian was burning with anxiety and said to Dongli in his heart, "Go open the door, why are you in a daze?" He definitely didn't hear the call in Yang Dingtian's heart. Dongli took out an hourglass from his arms and put it to his ear to listen, confirming that the sand had flowed out. Suddenly he quickly got up, touched the black door with both hands, and then pushed it open with force. Sure enough, the black door was easily opened. Then, a terrifying aura of death suddenly poured into the hall. This terrifying aura of death even suddenly turned into a gust of wind. A gloomy and dark smell instantly filled the entire hall. Dongli stood at the door, his body trembling, but he didn't step in. Yang Dingtian could understand, because he was blind. At this time, behind the door was a completely unfamiliar world. Just like a normal blind person in an unfamiliar house, he didn't dare to step out at first, because he didn't know if there would be a cliff below after opening the door. Yang Dingtian wasn't blind, but he couldn't see the world behind the black door. Because from here, it was completely dark, even darker than the previously closed door. So it gave people the feeling that the door wasn't open. He took a deep breath. Yang Dingtian got up and circulated his qi. Whoosh! He directly passed by Dongli's side like lightning. His speed was extremely fast, and he was still in the isolated space. Yang Dingtian directly rushed into the world behind the black door. Dongli shouldn't have felt it, but he still instinctively turned his head. Previously, when Yang Dingtian passed by the experts of the Netherworld Sea, more than a dozen Netherworld Sea grandmasters didn't feel it. And Dongli actually felt it. It could be seen that after a person's eyes were blind, their inexplicable perception would become very sharp. His face seemed to be slightly uneasy. After a little hesitation, Dongli took a step toward the world behind the door and walked in. At this time, Yang Dingtian was in absolute darkness. That's right, it was absolute darkness. Endless darkness. The sky was completely dark, because whether it was the sun, the moon, or the stars, they couldn't emit light here. The world inside was very, very, very big. Yang Dingtian didn't know how to describe it, because it was complete darkness, so he didn't know how big this world was. But he could feel the emptiness and silence, and he could tell that this world was very, very, very big. If Yang Dingtian guessed correctly, this dark world would be more than 10 billion square kilometers, which was dozens of times the current chaos world. After all, these were all dead chaos worlds that had been destroyed. In the science of modern Earth, the universe was full of dead planets. After many stars died, they would gradually become white dwarfs, and finally dark stars, and even black holes. These dwarfs were constantly collapsing, and their density was infinitely increasing. And currently, More than 90% of the chaos world had died. More than 90% of the world had become dark matter. The little western paradise was the product of the last great destruction. And the human kingdom and the Dongli grassland were the only remaining land in the chaos world. Thinking of this, Yang Dingtian couldn't help but shudder. Taking a deep breath, Yang Dingtian took a step forward and continued to go deeper into this dark world. Strange. His body was getting heavier and heavier. Although for Yang Dingtian, it wasn't difficult to walk. However, the deeper he went, the heavier it became, and the gravity was increasing. This dead dark world was really collapsing. It was really like those dead planets in the universe, gradually becoming dwarfs. Just now, when Yang Dingtian just came in, he didn't feel much, but the deeper he looked, the higher the gravity. Then in the deepest part of the dark world, how many times the gravity was only ghosts knew. Of course, if this was the case, it meant that the area of the dark world wouldn't be as big as 10 billion square kilometers, because it was shrinking. But if this was still possible, after a part of this world died, it was constantly collapsing and shrinking, while the other part of the world was still intact. What kind of power was it that had separated them? But at this time, Yang Dingtian didn't have the mood to explore the gravity in the depths of the dark world. He wanted to find where the void-splitting fire would bloom. Obviously, this answer wasn't difficult, because not far to the west, there was a boundless void border. That was the border of the dark world. Yang Dingtian didn't have to spend too much effort to walk over. In fact, at this time, Dongli was not far from him, also walking towards the endless void border. However, this damned world of darkness was a vacuum. There was no air, so no sound could be made. And it was absolutely dark, so no figure could be seen. So when Dongli passed by him, neither of them noticed the other. That's right, Yang Dingtian also didn't notice Dongli. Until he reached the border of the abyss. Yang Dingtian saw Dongli again by the light and shadow of the abyss. This was the edge of the dark world. In front of him was the bottomless and endless abyss border. It was almost the same as the scene under the endless peak last time, but it was countless times bigger, tens of thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, millions of times. Yang Dingtian knew that there were actually many void borders in this world. Because the dark world was also irregular, there were many places that bordered other worlds. The last time at the endless peak, he saw one of them. However, these void borders gave off a feeling of being in another world. Therefore, almost no one had ever seen or entered them before. And here was the largest void border. Of course, there was another kind of abyss border. Demon spirits and even night owls lived there. Although Yang Dingtian had never been to those places. But many people had been to evil ways. That place was at the edge of the current chaotic world, and there was no need to pass through any space door. So to be precise, that was the border of the current life continent. And here was the border of the death world. In the small void border under the endless peak, Yang Dingtian could still see many energy creatures. At the border of this huge void, there were no longer any energy creatures. Even energy creatures couldn't survive in this place. Therefore, the huge void border in front of him was exactly the same as the one under the endless peak, but there was no life. There was only surging light, and strange shadows, full of mysterious and terrifying science fiction. Then the question came, would the way the void crack fire bloomed here be exactly the same as under the endless peak? Soon, Yang Dingtian saw the answer. It was exactly the same. A pale flame suddenly appeared at the abyss border. It was still a dazzling snow-white flame. Then this white flame continued to expand. Then it began to split. One black, one white. One flower became two flowers became four flowers. Just like that, it kept splitting and splitting. Everything was the same, only the speed was different. The speed of the void crack fire here was extremely shocking. In the end, the entire abyss border, it was unknown whether it was tens of thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles of void border, was filled with black and white flames. It blocked all the strange shadows in the abyss. It was unknown whether it was tens of thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles of abyss. All of it was burning with flames. Finally, these flames stopped splitting. Then the black and white flames began to merge. It was exactly the same as the situation under the endless peak. But the scale was hundreds of thousands of times, millions of times larger. But at that time, Yao Qi jumped down and died. Now would Yang Dingtian jump? Chapter 769. The countless black and white flames below continued to merge and fuse. Then, the whole scene became extremely strange and complicated. The color of the flame kept changing, and then gradually became transparent. Yang Dingtian opened his eyes wide. He wanted to find the slightest difference from the bottom of endless eternal peak. But he failed. The scene before him was exactly the same as the bottom of endless eternal peak. It was just that the scale was tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of times bigger. Therefore, at a glance, the entire border of the abyss, which spanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers, had become sparkling and translucent. The scene was truly shocking. But the question was, would Yang Dingtian jump? Yang Dingtian faced the same problem as Yao Qi. But the situation before him was even worse. Yao Qi was thinking, what if it was teacher Yongxi's trap? Meanwhile, Yang Dingtian had already witnessed the scene of Yao Qi jumping down to her death. Now, Yang Dingtian truly understood Yao Qi's feelings back then. Once he retreated, once he didn't jump, he would lose the chance to obtain the void fire forever. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he would lose the chance to know the answer forever. Hence, even though Yao Qi had a hunch that it might be teacher Yongxi's trap, he still jumped down. Then he died. So, how should Yang Dingtian choose? He had once said something, or rather, he had quoted someone else's words. It wasn't that he couldn't gamble with his life, but he had to gamble when he had no way out. He had to gamble when he was in a hopeless situation. So was he in a hopeless situation? Of course, it could also be said that Yao Qi had died, because the border of the abyss was too small. The border of the abyss was huge, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of times bigger. But didn't that mean that he would die more easily? Should he jump? If he jumped, he might die. If he didn't, he would lose forever. Then, Dongli had already walked forward towards the end of the border of the abyss. He was getting closer and closer. Although he couldn't see, he could feel time. The boundless void fire below continued to become transparent. It became more and more transparent. In the end, it was no longer a sparkling and translucent crystal, but a complete void. There was nothing transparent to the extreme. Dongli was already at the edge of the abyss. He took a deep breath and prepared to jump down. If Yang Dingtian didn't jump, Dongli would jump. Brother Yao Qi, now I truly understand your state of mind. Even if he knows that it's a fatal trap, he might still jump in, Yang Dingtian thought to himself. Then, he gritted his teeth and jumped into the endless abyss. Yang Dingtian was not dead. This was extremely strange. It was clearly exactly the same as below the endless eternal peak, just that the scale was countless times larger. Perhaps it was even more transparent, reaching the extreme of nothingness. However, Yao Qi died as soon as she jumped down, and Yang Dingtian jumped down safe and sound. The moment he jumped down, he had a very mysterious feeling, as if he had traveled through time and space. He continued to fall. He had no idea how deep he had fallen. When he finally stopped, he realized that he was in a very mysterious illusion. It was as if he was in a transparent house, a house that was absolutely transparent. As the walls were extremely transparent, it didn't feel like there were any walls, but he could still feel its existence. The house was dark, and there was no light in it. However, the transparent things seemed to give him a feeling of brightness, so he fell into a very contradictory situation. In short, the room gave Yang Dingtian a feeling that it was extremely sealed and safe. It was as if as long as he hid inside, even if the world was destroyed, even if the universe exploded, he would be safe and sound. However, the most important thing was, could this be considered as swallowing the space-splitting fire? Why didn't he feel anything? There wasn't any mysterious fire in his body, and his cultivation didn't increase at all. Moreover, how the hell was he going to get out of here? At this moment, whoosh, A white flame appeared in front of Yang Dingtian's eyes. Looking at it from such a close distance, although the white flame was strange, it was quite beautiful. Moreover, it instantly lit up the room that was filled with a mysterious feeling. Then a black flame lit up beside it. Of course, it was also thanks to the existence of the white flame that Yang Dingtian discovered the black flame. Then the black and white flames started to mix. From black to white, to gray, and finally to transparent. Yes, it was extremely transparent. How to describe it? It was like a space door. As if it was completely independent of this world. As it was extremely pure and transparent, there was a boundary between it and the surroundings. It turned out that the so-called swallowing space-splitting fire wasn't the one that swallowed the entire border of the abyss, but this one. There was a feeling of I'm only going to drink 1 out of 3,000. Then how should he swallow it? Moreover, the strange thing was that if it was in the past, the dark mysterious fire would have been restless. To it, the heaven and earth mysterious fire was a perfect tonic, and the dark mysterious fire treated it as its life. However, at this moment, the black-green mysterious fire was dormant in the depths of Yang Dingtian's energy reserve, and it didn't move at all, as if it wasn't interested in the space-splitting fire in front of it at all. Yang Dingtian's gaze fell on the seemingly invisible space-splitting fire, and he was puzzled. How should he swallow it? Such a small space-splitting fire should be the same as the million-spirit demonic fire and the demon-spirit demonic fire. Therefore, Yang Dingtian carefully injected a stream of mysterious qi. Huff! Instantly, the space-splitting fire in front of him stretched out its head and connected with Yang Dingtian's mysterious qi directly. Boom! Then, an endless amount of energy suddenly exploded. In an instant, it filled the entire special room. Then, all the entrances of Yang Dingtian's mysterious meridians were completely opened. This endless amount of space-splitting fire energy crazily poured into Yang Dingtian's mysterious meridians and into his energy reserve. Such a crazy level of energy was even many times more powerful than the demon spirit demonic fire. At the moment when the endless amount of energy poured in, Yang Dingtian's body disappeared instantly. It was as if his entire body had disappeared in an instant, leaving only his consciousness. Then his energy reserve expanded crazily. Almost instantly, his entire divine sense sank into nothingness, because he had broken through to the 8-star Great Grandmaster. Then, just a few minutes later, his energy reserve expanded crazily again. Boom! His energy reserve exploded again, and his entire body and divine sense sank into nothingness again. Yang Dingtian broke through again, and became a 9-star Great Grandmaster. Every small level after 9-star Great Grandmaster and 9-star Great Grandmaster would become extremely difficult. Going from a 9-star first-class Great Grandmaster to a 9-star second-class Great Grandmaster was no less than going from a 1-star Great Grandmaster to a 2-star Great Grandmaster. Then, the amount of energy needed to go from a 9-star first-class Great Grandmaster to a 9-star second-class Great Grandmaster might exceed that of a 1-star Great Grandmaster to a 2-star Great Grandmaster. After breaking through to the 9-star Great Grandmaster, the endless amount of energy crazily poured into Yang Dingtian's energy reserve. In just a quarter of an hour, it filled Yang Dingtian's entire energy reserve. Yang Dingtian's energy reserve expanded again. Boom! Very forcefully, it entered nothingness again. Yang Dingtian broke through to the 9-star first-class Great Grandmaster. Then endless energy crazily poured in again. A quarter of an hour later, Yang Dingtian broke through to the 9-star second-class Great Grandmaster. In this way, the time needed to break through each level began to double, and the energy needed also began to double. Yang Dingtian was right about one thing, but also wrong about another. After passing the 9-star Great Grandmaster, the increase of each level was far more than the increase of 1 to 2 stars, or even 2 to 9 stars from 8 stars. The amount of energy needed to break through each small level was an astronomical figure. However, the increase in combat effectiveness was not that exaggerated. It was not as fast as when breaking through to the stars, because at this time, the entire energy reserve was crazily accumulating energy to prepare for breaking through to the half-saint. In this way, Yang Dingtian crazily devoured the energy of the void-cracking fire in this completely independent room. He kept breaking through and leveling up. 9-star second class, 9-star third class, 9-star fourth class, 9-star fifth class, 9-star sixth class, 9-star seventh class, 9-star eighth class, 9-star ninth class. Every time he leveled up, the time and energy needed increased exponentially. The time needed to reach the final 9-star ninth class could even be said to be very long. Moreover, after breaking through to the 9-star ninth class, although he was still crazily devouring the energy of the void-cracking fire, however, the entire energy reserve seemed to have become a bottomless pit. No matter how much energy entered, it did not have the slightest reaction. It did not even tremble a little. It was as if the entire energy reserve had become a funnel. It was not that the energy of the void-cracking fire was not enough, but next, there would be endless 9-star 9th class great grandmasters. Infinite. It just could not break through to the half-saint. In order to break through to the half-saint, there must be a qualitative change. Therefore, Yang Dingtian was not surprised at this result. In the past, every time he devoured the mysterious fire, Yang Dingtian could not estimate how much his cultivation would break through. But at this time, when he devoured the void-cracking fire, Yang Dingtian could easily know how much he would break through. It was a 9-star 9th class great grandmaster. Previously, Yang Dingtian was even worried that he would not be able to reach this level. However, the energy of the void-cracking fire was far more powerful than he had imagined. It easily allowed him to break through to the 9-star 9th class great grandmaster. However, the remaining energy disappeared without a trace, as if it had entered a funnel. Then he did not know when. Yang Dingtian could not feel the energy of the void-cracking fire pouring in. But it did not seem that its energy had been exhausted and disappeared. It was because it kept pouring in. But the energy reserve did not feel anything, nor did it splash any ripples. Therefore, he instinctively felt as if the influx had stopped. However, Yang Dingtian still did not move at all. He just sat there quietly motionless. Then, time seemed to have come to a standstill. Or it was flowing away quickly, but Yang Dingtian fell into a state of silence, as if he was asleep, but also not asleep. After an unknown period of time, in short, Yang Dingtian woke up. At this time, he was no longer in that mysterious room, nor was he at the edge of the abyss. Instead, he was sitting on the dark matter continent of death. It was really strange. He was clearly in the abyss just now. Why did he appear on the dark matter continent of death now? Did his body move after devouring the void-cracking fire? Yang Dingtian could not help but look up. At first glance, he saw the edge of the abyss, about 100 miles ahead. The endless abyss border. Yang Dingtian understood. The place where he was at the edge of the abyss last time. However, it was completely dead now, and had become the dark matter continent. This death continent was constantly invading, spreading, and devouring new continents that were not completely dead yet. In other words, the blooming of the void-cracking fire just now. In fact, it was the entire death continent devouring the second era. The result of the energy release of the void-cracking fire was the death continent that was 100 miles wide and hundreds of thousands of miles long. Of course, in another way, the energy of the void-cracking fire was the last release of the death continent of tens of millions of square kilometers. After the release, these tens of millions of square kilometers would become the death continent and the dark matter continent. The edge of the abyss meant death, the death of the entire world. In other words, every 200 years, the void-cracking fire would be released, which meant the death of tens of millions of square kilometers of land. Yang Dingtian reached out and touched it. The entire dark matter continent was absolutely flat, as if it was flatter than a mirror. And he could not feel anything when he touched it. He suddenly pulled out his Emperor-grade soul sword and slashed down. There was no reaction because this was an indescribable substance that was dead to the extreme, so it could not be hurt. Then, Yang Dingtian attacked with the mystic fire again, but there was still no reaction. Taking a deep breath, Yang Dingtian's heart became heavy. But then he thought of something very important. Where did Dongli go? Just now, when he was about to jump into the abyss to devour the void-cracking fire, Yang Dingtian beat him to it. So, the void-cracking fire was snatched away by Yang Dingtian. In that case, he should still be on the Death Continent. He should be nearby, but there was no trace of him. Of course, this was the extremely dark Death Continent. Even if he was here, he could not see him. Moreover, this was a vacuum. Yang Dingtian had to rely on elixirs to survive, so he could not transmit any energy waves or sound, unless the two of them bumped into each other face to face. So, even if he was not far away, Yang Dingtian would not be able to find him, unless he suddenly released a flame to illuminate the surrounding Death Continent. It should be known that Yang Dingtian's cultivation was not inferior to Dongli's at all. Plus, there were 4 mystic fires in his body. It should not be a problem to kill Dongli. But now there was another very, very important thing. He had already devoured the void-cracking fire, but he had not used its mysterious attribute, nor had he seen its special ability. There were countless resentful spirits in the million-spirit demonic fire. The demon spirit demonic fire could immobilize the enemy and create an energy barrier. Then, as the second most powerful mystic fire in the world, what special and terrifying ability did it have? Chapter 770. Yang Dingtian instinctively wanted to use the void-splitting fire to see how powerful the second arcane fire was. However, after some hesitation, he suddenly felt that this was the Death Continent, and there was an endless amount of dark matter under his feet. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to use the void-splitting fire outside. Therefore, Yang Dingtian turned back and walked in the direction of the dark door according to his memory. Although the Death Continent in the first era was extremely dark, and one could not even see their fingers in front of them. However, Yang Dingtian still walked back to the dark door and touched it. It was indeed an ice-cold dark door. Yang Dingtian was about to push the door open when he suddenly stopped. If Dongli was still in the dark world, then killing him here might be the best result. If he was still in there, then there were only the two of them here. Yang Dingtian should have a great advantage in killing him. Therefore, Yang Dingtian's eyes turned cold, and he slowly turned around. Then, he suddenly pulled out his Emperor-grade soul sword and slashed at the sky of the dark world with an earth-shattering bolt of lightning. Pow! The lightning that was tens of thousands of meters long instantly lit up the dark world within a few hundred miles. Then, Yang Dingtian used the arcane fire to shoot back and suddenly flew up into the sky, looking for Dongli's figure. This huge lightning almost tore apart all the darkness within a few hundred miles. The entire space was as bright as day. Yang Dingtian was high up in the sky and could see everything within a few hundred miles below. However, he did not see any figure of Dongli. This place was extremely flat, even flatter than a mirror. There was no hiding place at all. Since Dongli was not here, did that mean that he had already left? Or was he already dead? Because he could not see Yang Dingtian jumping down, he would also jump down. However, Yang Dingtian had already swallowed the void-splitting fire, so there was nothing for Dongli to do. Therefore, it was very likely that he would die if he jumped down. Yang Dingtian was still not at ease. He released another bolt of lightning and saw even more clearly in the space domain. Still, he could not see any figure. However, far, far away, Yang Dingtian seemed to see an incomparably dark mountain. After the continent of the first era died, it kept collapsing, and the gravity kept increasing, so it would instinctively form an extremely flat surface. However, there was a tall mountain in the distance of the dark world. It was taller than any mountain Yang Dingtian had ever seen. Perhaps it was several 100,000 meters tall. Yang Dingtian estimated that this source was at least a few thousand miles away, or even tens of thousands of miles away. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian had the urge to go to the dark mountain. Perhaps the most extreme secrets of the entire world were hidden there. Or perhaps the so-called Lord of Chaos was somewhere else? That was because there was no other place in the world that was more mysterious and powerful than this mountain. However, Yang Dingtian quickly gave up on this fantasy, This was impossible to reach. No one knew how far it was, perhaps tens of thousands of li. The deeper they went, the higher the gravitational force. The gravitational force of that mountain was perhaps indescribable. However, Yang Dingtian wanted to try the ferocity of this dark world. Therefore, he went deeper into the dark world again. He entered 100 miles in the direction of the mountain. This 100 miles was still very easy, because the gravitational force was only about 10 times. He went another 100 miles. At this time, the gravitational force was 30 times. Of course, this wasn't considered strenuous for Yang Dingtian. However, the troublesome thing was that his body needed more and more energy. So the speed of taking pills was increasing. When he went 300 miles, the gravitational force was already 100 times. When he went 500 miles, the gravitational force was already 200 times. In other words, Yang Dingtian was carrying nearly 50 to 60,000 kilograms. At this time, Yang Dingtian could no longer walk as fast as he could. When he went 800 miles, the gravitational force was already 500 times. At this time, Yang Dingtian's load had reached 150,000 kilograms. Of course, this load was still not a big problem for him. However, his body and meridians seemed to be somewhat unable to bear it. So he already needed to use his qi to provide a counterforce. Otherwise his body would have been injured. At this time, that huge mountain was still extremely far away. Yang Dingtian knew that he should give up. This was just an exploration. Perhaps he would come to conquer this huge mountain in the future, but definitely not now. With his current ability, perhaps he could go 3,000 miles. However, once he went that far, he would not be able to return. Looking at the huge mountain in the distance, Yang Dingtian took a deep breath, then turned and left. A few hours later, Yang Dingtian arrived in front of the door of darkness again. He did not immediately open the door, because going 800 miles into the dark world consumed a lot of his qi, so he had to replenish it immediately. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if he encountered an enemy after entering the main hall. Of course, with Yang Dingtian's current strength, as long as he did not encounter a half-saint expert, he had nothing to fear. After taking a qi-gathering pill, Yang Dingtian sat down cross-legged and devoured his qi. Now Yang Dingtian was about to use Shiman Ningming's highest-level qi-gathering pill, the 9th-grade qi-gathering pill. Moreover, he had to take at least several pills at a time to fully recover his qi. 1 hour later, Yang Dingtian had completely recovered his battle mystic qi. Then he took a deep breath, prepared to be invisible, flash and fight, and was about to open the dark door. However, another thought came to his mind. How could this dark door seal the entire dark world? It should be known that this dark world was extremely large, possibly dozens of times larger than the entire human countries. Therefore, Yang Dingtian burst out a bolt of lightning to see this dark door clearly. Bang! The lightning suddenly tore open the darkness, illuminating the surrounding 100 miles. Yang Dingtian saw it clearly. This was indeed a lonely door, but on both sides of the door, there were endless dark energy walls, connecting the entire world, and completely separating the dark world from the human countries. If the door was destroyed, the wall of darkness energy was destroyed, the Hall of Heads would be destroyed as well. Then what would happen to this world? Only God knew. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian felt that this world was really as dangerous as an egg. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the dark door. Inside the hall, it was still extremely quiet. There was no one in sight, and Dongli was not inside. After Yang Dingtian returned to the hall, the first thing he did was to breathe hard, because in the dark world, there was a complete vacuum, and one had to rely on pills to survive. After Yang Dingtian came out, the dark door slowly closed. He could not help but reach out to push the door again, only to find that after coming out, the dark door could not be pushed open at all. Yang Dingtian tried to push the second colorless door, and found that it could not be pushed open either. At this moment, Yang Dingtian was really curious. Behind the first dark door was the dark world, a world that was completely dead. Then, what was behind the second colorless door? It should be the second world that was destroyed but not completely dead. The ruins of the Naga Empire should be there too. But how should he enter? Yao Qi swallowed the space-splitting fire not to become stronger, but to obtain the treasures of the Naga Empire. But if he could obtain the treasures of the Naga Empire with the space-splitting fire, why didn't Wentian go? However, in this matter, Yang Dingtian was instinctively willing to believe Yao Qi, because, for the treasures of the Naga Empire, Yao Qi was even willing to risk his life. With his intelligence, he would definitely not do something that was not worth it. The reason why Wentian did not obtain the treasures of the Naga Empire could only mean that he did not have the time, or that he did not meet any conditions. But soon another answer appeared, which made Yang Dingtian shudder. What if Wentian obtained the treasures of the Naga Empire? Or, after he lost the battle with Nihility Piaoling, he used the space-splitting fire to escape to the ruins of the Naga Empire. Yang Dingtian realized that he had made a huge mistake. That's right, according to his conjecture, Yongxi was possessed by Wentian's soul. But he was only a part of Wentian's soul, the soul of the paralyzed Wentian in the primal chaos world. Also, did Wentian possess Yongxi before or after he swallowed the space-splitting fire? But it did not matter if it was before or after. Wentian must have possessed Yongxi's body before he went to the ruins of the Naga Empire. Hence, Yongxi did not know much about the space-splitting fire, because it was very likely that after he obtained the space-splitting fire, he did not have time to experience it before that part of his soul entered Yongxi's body. Then, Yang Dingtian started to recall the scene in the Nether Ghost City. Earth's Wentian soul clone tore open a space-time gate and came from hundreds of thousands of miles away. 200 years ago, Wentian definitely did not have this ability. Also, where did the Queen Devil Queen and Crown Prince Li Ming go? Netherworld was defeated, Dongli was defeated, and even Yongxi Wentian was imprisoned. Yet these two people did not appear. This meant that the Devil Queen and Li Ming had more important things to do. Hence, Yang Dingtian came to a conclusion. The space-splitting fire and the treasures of the Naga Empire were definitely not nonsense. And Yongxi Wentian did not know much about these things. The one in charge was still Earth's Wentian. At most, Yongxi Wentian's status was higher than Dongli and Netherworld. This was because he was in charge of the Little Western Paradise, Dongli was in charge of the Naga Empire, and Netherworld was in charge of the human countries. The highest boss was still Earth's Wentian. In fact, that half-step sage-level body still belonged to Earth's Wentian. Then Yang Dingtian made a very bold guess. Would that Earth's Wentian's body be? In the ruins of the Naga Empire? Or on the Dark Mountain? Yang Dingtian shook his head and threw away the thoughts in his mind. He focused on the problem in reality. Where did Dongli go? Did he die? How long had he stayed in the world of darkness? Then Yang Dingtian felt that it was time to try out the space-splitting fire ability. Hence, he took a deep breath and summoned the fourth heaven and earth Xian flame in his body, the space-splitting fire. Whoosh! A white flame floated out. Whoosh! A black flame floated out. Then, the black and white flames began to merge. From gray, it became transparent and colorless. Then, this flame began to compress, becoming thinner and thinner, and its surface area became bigger and bigger. When it was transparent to the extreme, it seemed to have become a jumping door. A door that was more than a meter tall. It was very mysterious and beautiful. It was like a glass flame without any thickness, floating in the air. Yang Dingtian had been influenced by many movies and novels on Earth. At first glance, he felt that this was like a space door. Hence, Yang Dingtian carefully put his hand deep into the door. Then something strange happened. His hand disappeared. Moreover, he couldn't see his hand in the air behind the thin transparent door. It was as if his arm had completely disappeared from this world. Where did this space door lead to? Hence, Yang Dingtian carefully put his head in. Instantly, it was complete darkness, a darkness that couldn't be seen. Moreover, it was extremely suffocating without any air. Also, his whole head instantly became incomparably heavy. His head, which was at most 10 kilograms, instantly became more than 10,000 kilograms. In an instant, Yang Dingtian felt that his whole head was about to explode. Hence, he immediately retreated and left the flame space door. He understood. This space door led to the world of darkness. In other words, this void-splitting fire was a space door that could throw anything into the world of darkness. This was an extremely heaven-defying ability, and also an extremely terrifying ability. This meant that Yang Dingtian could enter the world of darkness at any time. It also meant that Yang Dingtian could throw anyone into the world of darkness. Of course, once thrown in, it meant death. There was no air or anything inside. Moreover, there was an extremely terrifying gravity inside. It seemed to be completely random to any location in the world of darkness. Therefore, even if Yang Dingtian was fully prepared, he didn't dare to rashly enter, because he didn't know where he would be sent to. If it was tens of thousands of times the gravity, Yang Dingtian would probably die the moment he entered. Moreover, it was hard to say whether he could come out of this space door. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian's imagination was running wild again. If his cultivation was strong enough, he could directly create an incomparably huge space door trap when the battle started. Then, no matter how many enemies there were, as long as they entered this trap, they would all die without a doubt. Just when Yang Dingtian was immersed in infinite reverie, suddenly, he felt weak, and the combat qi in his sea of qi was about to be exhausted. Yang Dingtian was astonished. This void-splitting flame spatial door actually consumed so much mystic qi. A space door of more than 1 meter in size consumed the qi of a 9-star 9th grade great grandmaster in just 1 or 2 minutes. This was too extravagant. Therefore, Yang Dingtian hurriedly withdrew the void-splitting fire, sat cross-legged on the ground, swallowed a qi-gathering pill, and began to restore his combat qi. Then another thought came to his mind. The demon spirit fire, ranked 4th, had 2 functions. The netherworld ghost fire ranked 3rd in the world, and it was just a shadow fire, but it had 2 functions. One was immortality, and the other was an out-of-body experience. Then the void-splitting fire ranked 2nd in the world. Did it have other terrifying functions? Also, if the void-splitting fire could lead to the ruins of the Naga Empire, how should he get there? Just like that, Yang Dingtian pondered while recovering his battle mystic qi. At this time, in the sea area of the Forbidden Continent outside the Skull Hall, almost all the masters of the Nether Sea had withdrawn, leaving only 2 great grandmasters. It seemed that the Nether Sea's task was over. This task was the void-splitting fire. Whether it was a success or a failure, it was over. At the same time, Dongli was riding a demon spirit ray, flying towards the capital of the Snakeman Empire. His eye sockets were no longer empty. Instead, there were 2 deep and shining eyeballs. These eyes were not his, and he didn't know who they came from. However, these eyes should be completely decorative. Although they could move, and even with eyebrows and eyelids, they could make expressions. But as a basic function of seeing things, they could no longer do that. At this time, Dongli's eyes were dull and fanatical, looking in the direction of the capital, looking in the direction of Queen Hai Xian. He was also going to meet his final fate. Chapter 771. Dongli didn't enter the capital directly. Instead, he flew to the north of the Snakeman Empire. In the huge refinery in the north, he asked for a darkness crystal, an incomparably tiny darkness crystal. Even with his status as the prime minister, he could only get one that was the size of a speck of dust. After that, he arrived at a picturesque valley. This was his manner. He wanted to continue what he didn't finish previously, which was creating the darkness profound flame. This time it should be enough, right? Because he already had the heaven and earth profound flame, the void-rending flame. At that time Dongli also jumped down. Less than half a second after Yang Dingtian jumped down, he also jumped down. In fact, from the start to the end, he didn't even know about Yang Dingtian's existence. Moreover, he didn't die after jumping down. His situation was almost exactly the same as Yang Dingtian's. At the start, he fell into the boundless abyss and entered a sealed and transparent space. After that, a white flame and a black flame appeared in that space. These 2 flames started to fuse, turning into a completely transparent flame. After that, He used the most traditional method to devour this void-rending flame. Naturally, this process was told to him by eternal Shiwentian. However, he was someone who couldn't see. It wasn't easy for him to complete this series of things. But in the end, he still succeeded in devouring it. He was worried that Yang Dingtian would snatch the void-rending flame away at the last moment. But it didn't happen. After successfully devouring it, he left. He didn't care about Yang Dingtian at all. Of course, the time he took to devour the void-rending flame was much shorter than Yang Dingtian. After leaving the world of darkness, he first went to the Silver Capital to say his goodbyes. After that, he returned to the human countries with Mu Dan. That's right, Yang Dingtian and Dongli both devoured the void-rending flame. Other than the time they took to devour it, everything else should be the same. In that case, how many void-rending flames were there? Was it 2 or more? No idea at all. Maybe no one in this world knew. Even Wentian didn't know about this matter. Of course, Dongli did not make a breakthrough after devouring the spatial-rending flame. He was still a 9-star grade 9 martial grandmaster. However, for him, cultivation was not the most important thing. Conquering the Naga Empire was the most important thing. This was his life's mission, and the goal of his existence, that he gently summoned the void-rending flame. Immediately, a white flame floated out, followed by a black flame. The 2 flames began to fuse and become transparent. Dongli released this tiny darkness crystal. Its size was about 100 times larger than the darkness profound flame that Yang Dingtian created back then. The void-rending fire had yet to turn into a dimensional door, but it had already started to burn the dark crystal. Then, the energy of the mystic flame was quickly devoured, and this dark crystal was gradually getting bigger. Dongli began to increase his profound qi, and continued to release the void-splitting fire. Before the transparent flame turned into a spatial door, it also had an unparalleled temperature. The dark crystal continued to devour. Dongli was very familiar with the process. He continued to inject energy and mystic fire, and found the limit of the dark crystal's engulfment. 80%, 90%, 95%, 98%, 100%. Finally, the balance was reached. At this time, the energy released by the void-rending flame had reached the same level as the dark crystal. Then the mystic flame and the dark crystal were in a stalemate. One side was burning desperately, the other side was devouring desperately. In the end, neither side could do anything to the other. In the end, the stalemate reached its limit. Finally, the greed of the dark crystal won the balance. The darkness profound flame was suddenly devoured. Then, this dark crystal suddenly swelled to twice its original size. However, before it could start to feel proud, bang! The entire dark crystal suddenly exploded. Then a black flame abruptly emerged. The darkness profound flame, the real darkness profound flame, was 100 times larger than the one that Yang Dingtian created in the Sea of Hades. Of course, compared to Yang Dingtian's black-green mystic flame, it was only 1% or even smaller. Even so, the void-rending flame in Dongli's body had already been used up by half. In his energy reserve, only half of the void-rending flame was left. However, he didn't care at all. To him, the void-rending flame was only used to create the darkness profound flame. In his mind, the darkness profound flame was much more powerful and useful. He felt this darkness profound flame tightly, afraid that it would suddenly disappear like the last time. However, this didn't happen. The darkness profound flame was still burning, but because it was floating in the air, its energy was dissipating bit by bit. Dongli hurriedly kept it in his energy reserve. Without any mishaps, this darkness profound flame entered his chi si obediently. Ha 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 ha. Instantly he looked up to the sky and laughed. He finally succeeded. The bad luck of being blinded by Yang Dingtian was swept away. Queen Hai Xian was his, the Snake People Empire was his. After laughing wildly, he suddenly flew into the sky, sat on the demonic spirit ray, and flew towards the direction of the capital. Hai Xian, I'm coming. From today onwards, I won't let you escape from my hands. Yang Dingtian can die now. When he successfully swallowed the void-rending flame, He directly went to Indu and suggested that Yang Dingtian didn't need to live anymore, so he could die. This was because the demigod descendants of the Snake People Empire and the Little Western Paradise could all be created by Dongli alone. Wuyu thought for a while and said, "Wait until you have successfully conquered Queen Hai Xian." Therefore, as long as he succeeded in conquering Queen Hai Xian, then Yang Dingtian's death would come. Not only did Dongli want to conquer the Snake People Empire, he also wanted to conquer the entire demon fox race. And even Wuyu, at this moment, Yang Dingtian was in the main hall. He realized that he couldn't get out. It was as if the Skull Main Hall had special care for the entire human nation, so this door was tightly shut. Only humans could open it from the outside. It wasn't like the Little Western Paradise, where anyone with the fallen silver dragon bloodline could enter and leave. It wasn't like the void-rending flame, where one could casually create a spatial door to enter the dark world. This was troublesome. Who knew when people would come through the green door of the human race? Perhaps for years or even decades, no one would come and go. Of course, Wuyu from the Sea of Hades was an exception. Now he could only hope that Mu Dan hadn't returned to the human nation, or that the people from the Sea of Hades often traveled between the human nation and the Little Western Paradise. This way, he could get out in the shortest time possible. At this moment, the silver door of the Little Western Paradise suddenly opened. Yang Dingtian was stunned and immediately went into stealth mode. It was actually Yao Ling, that girl. Yao Li's daughter, Yao Li's sister, and Shadowless's first love. She really ran away. She still had to go to the human nation to find Shadowless. She went directly to the human green door and pushed it hard, but it didn't budge at all. This simple-minded fox girl, after not budging the first time, actually pushed with all her might. She thought that she didn't have enough strength. If you want to push, so be it. Why did you have to bend over so high? Yao Ling's clothing was different from the fox noble women. It was very primitive. On her upper body, she wore a beast skin bra. On her lower body, she wore a beast skin skirt. And on her feet, she wore beast skin boots. Of course, this girl's body wasn't as perfect as Ji's, but she was very fit. Especially her small waist, so she was very energetic. Plus, with this skimpy outfit, her snow-white long legs and small waist were exposed. Also, she was bending over to push the door. Not only was her posture seductive, but she was also completely exposed. Yang Dingtian immediately lowered his gaze. This was Shadowless's first love after all. Shadowless was not only his subordinate, but also his elder. This one-track-minded girl, after pushing the door for a whole hour, finally realized that she couldn't push it open. Thus, she sat under the green door and waited for it to open. She didn't have any intention of leaving. This time, Yang Dingtian was in trouble. Could it be that he had been invisible all this time? A few hours later, Dongli flew into the capital of the Snakemen Empire. Then, he landed in the Pyramid Hall. Even though he was the Prime Minister of the Snakemen Empire, he couldn't see Queen Hai Xian directly. He had to report to her. He came to the front of the female official Viper Z, revealing a wicked and charming smile. Releasing a unique aura of the dark mysterious flame, he said, "Miss Z, please report to Her Majesty that Dongli wants to see her. Tell her that Dongli has succeeded." Viper Z's beautiful face trembled slightly, and then she said, "Please wait a moment, Prime Minister." Then, she swam into the hall to report to Queen Hai Xian. Dongli's eyes were filled with greed as he stared at her back. He had always coveted Viper Z's beauty. As long as he could conquer Queen Hai Xian, all the beauties of the Snakeman race would belong to him. After a while, Viper Z came back and said, "Prime Minister, Her Majesty is waiting for you in the bedroom on the top floor." Haha. Dongli's mind was suddenly shaken, and then he flew to the bedroom on the top floor. It was actually the bedroom. Her Majesty's thoughts were as clear as day. Queen Hai Xian, with a magic-like body, wore a golden wrap dress. As a result, her voluptuous body was extremely alluring and seductive. At the same time, her beautiful face emitted a soul-stirring radiance. Dongli finally succeeded. She had been waiting for this day for many, many years. Not only did she need a man who could make her fall in love with him, but she also needed a man who could be controlled by her. Therefore, although Yang Dingtian could make her fall in love with him, but she would definitely not choose him, because she couldn't control Yang Dingtian, and she might even fall in love with him. But Dongli was different. This man with evil ways was crazily infatuated with her. Moreover, he was extremely greedy. She knew Dongli's ambition. He wanted to conquer the entire Snakemen Empire by conquering her. He even coveted all the beauties in the Snakemen Empire. Queen Hai Exan didn't care about this at all. As long as Dongli could be controlled, it was fine. As for controlling Dongli, Queen Seaheart was very confident in her ability, because in the bottom of his heart, Dongli resented the Temple of Annihilation. He especially hated why Wentian didn't allow him to kill Yang Dingtian. She had enough confidence to make Dongli choose to approach her, and not the Temple of Annihilation. Moreover, once Dongli became the only person who could make the Snakemen Empire and the Fox tribe give birth to a demigod descendant, his ambition would grow crazily. At that time, it would be unknown whether he would still listen to the orders of the evil ways. At this moment, the door of the bedroom opened, and Dongli slowly walked in. At first glance, Queen Hai Exan could see the difference. Firstly, Dongli's eyes were different. They weren't his own eyes. Secondly, his body was permeated with a dark energy. This energy made her palpitate. That's right, this dark energy made her heart beat violently, and she felt a throbbing. Then, the temperature of her delicate body started to rise slightly. This was the energy of the darkness mystic flame. It was indeed able to stimulate the women of the Snakemen race. Dongli didn't panic. Instead, he knelt down and said, "Your subject, Dongli, pays his respects to your majesty. I have returned victorious." "Oh, is that so?" Queen Hai Exan said in a hoarse voice. "Then come and try. Everything will be revealed on the bed." Dongli smiled evilly. Every part of his body seemed to be singing and burning. The day he had waited for had finally arrived. How long had it been? The day had finally arrived. He was going to possess the most powerful woman in the world, the most beautiful woman. After Queen Hai Exan finished speaking, she lazily lay down on the bed. She used her arm to support her chin, allowing her delicate body to lie on her side. The undulating curves of the mountains and rivers were even more captivating. Dongli kowtowed and said, "Before going to Mount Wu with your majesty, I would like to make a request." "Speak," Hai Exan said. Dongli smiled and said, "After we are done, we will immediately kill Yang Dingtian. How about it? You can kill him personally." Hai Exan was slightly taken aback. Then she said, "All right. Since I already have you, there is no need for him to live." Dongli smiled proudly and kowtowed. "Then, your majesty, please enjoy my service." Then, Dongli got up from the ground and slowly walked towards Queen Hai Exan's jade bed. He was still not anxious, because he already had something that belonged to him. There was no need to be anxious. His hands wandered in the air above Queen Hai Exan. Although he was touching the air, it gave off an incomparably seductive feeling. Then, he moved closer and greedily sniffed Queen Hai Exan's unique and enchanting scent. "God, this is the most beautiful woman in the world. She finally belongs to me." Then, Dongli knelt on the bed and slowly kissed Queen Hai Exan's lips. Suddenly, Queen Hai Exan's cold voice sounded. "Dongli, did you succeed or not? Why do I not feel aroused at all?" Dongli was shocked. Chapter 772. How is that possible? Dongli said in shock. I have already obtained the void-splitting fire, and I have already successfully birthed the darkness mystic flame. Queen Hai Exan said, "I know. I have already smelled the dark energy in your body, and it made my heart throb." Dongli's face lit up with joy, and he said, Then isn't it possible?" Queen Hai Exan said, "But that's all. After that, I don't feel anything anymore. Even when you are close to me, when you want to touch and kiss me, that throbbing feeling has completely disappeared. Even all the pores on my body have started to close up, rejecting your closeness. Dongli said, how about I release the darkness mystic flame and let you feel its energy? Then, Dongli summoned the darkness mystic flame from his chi vessel. Instantly, a dark flame burned in his palm. Queen Hai Xian looked at the darkness mystic flame, and her beautiful eyes suddenly became blurred, and her heart throbbed. What a beautiful darkness mystic flame! As if it was the most beautiful and most moving thing in the world. Instantly, Queen Hai Xian's breathing became hurried again, and her snow-white neck flushed red. Dongli was overjoyed, and he wanted to hug Hai Xian and kiss her. But just as he got close, Queen Hai Xian's body instantly turned cold, and from inside to outside, an extreme coldness and resistance emerged. Dongli's heart was about to burst, and he said sorrowfully, Your Majesty, please give me a chance. I will definitely succeed. Then Dongli knelt on the bed and tears flowed down his face. Hai Xian saw him like this and sighed, and said, All right, I will give you one and only chance. Thank you, Your Majesty, thank you, Your Majesty. Dongli climbed up from the bed, and wanted to use his methods to the extreme. He was born to conquer Hai Xian, so his methods were naturally to the extreme. In the past, he had never failed to win against any woman. He knelt at the feet of the Sea Heart Queen, gently massaging her feet that were covered in crocodile leather boots. As soon as Dongli's hand touched the skin on her feet, her whole body suddenly trembled. A feeling of disgust instantly welled up in his heart, as if he had been licked by a poisonous snake. She couldn't take it anymore, and kicked out with her other leg. Instantly, Dongli was sent flying by the kick. Then, she got up and wiped her feet where Dongli had touched. She put on her crocodile shoes, and left the bed. I'm sorry, Dongli. I can't do it. Queen Hai Xian said indifferently, Us snake people are different from you humans. You human women can be touched by many men, whereas for us snake people, unless it's our own spouse, otherwise the feeling of fear and disgust after being touched by others is totally irresistible. Taking a deep breath, Queen Hai Xian said, Now it seems that the darkness profound flame can only make my heart palpitate, but is unable to make me fall in love. The reason why Yang Dingtian can make me fall in love is because of other reasons, and not the darkness profound flame. So your efforts are in vain. After saying that, Queen Hai Xian turned around and left. As for Dongli, it was as if he had been struck by lightning as he collapsed onto the ground. If a person suffered a huge blow, then he would enter a temporary state of numbness and completely lose any reaction. And at this moment, Dongli had suffered an unprecedented blow. If the void-splitting fire had been snatched away by Yang Dingtian, then this blow wouldn't be so huge. But he had already obtained the void-splitting fire, and had already successfully given birth to the darkness profound flame. Why was it still not working? Why was it still not working? Since the darkness profound flame couldn't make the snake people fall in love, then why did he have to successfully give birth to the darkness profound flame? What was the meaning of all this? Was the heavens toying with him? Was the heavens toying with him? Yu Ming's mission in this life was to deal with God's spokesperson, Yang Dingtian, and to control the human countries. And Dongli's mission in this life was to control the snake people, to make the snake people fall in love. After Yu Ming was defeated in the duel with Yang Dingtian, even though his cultivation was 10 times higher than Yang Dingtian's, he still gave up all hope and directly sought death. Even if he was bestowed with the first great evil spirit, and allowed to break through to the half-step sage realm, he had also lost all his ambitions and goals. Every day, he would bring Ling Wu on a scenic tour, and think of all ways to make Ling Wu stronger, and defeat the desire of a second great evil spirit. Then what about Dongli? The failure this time basically meant that he had completely failed. It meant that Dongli's mission in this life had completely failed. It meant that his birth had lost all meaning, and it meant that he had completely accomplished nothing. Then what was the meaning of him living? Immediately, Dongli completely understood why Yu Ming would seek death wholeheartedly. Once one discovered that his existence had no meaning, then anyone would possibly lose the motivation to live. PFFF. A mouthful of blood was suddenly spat out. Dongli laid on the ground dejectedly as he stared blankly at the magnificent dome. What should I do? What should I do? Seek death wholeheartedly like you Ming? No, no. Heavens, why are you treating me like this? Why are you treating me like this? Why is Yang Dingtian able to obtain all your favor? Why is he the one who gets all the good things? No matter what he wants or doesn't want, you've given all of them to Yang Dingtian. Why is it that the goal that I've been fighting for my entire life is within Yang Dingtian's reach, and discarded like a worn-out shoe? I can't accept this, I can't accept this, I can't accept this. I will definitely not be as useless as you Ming. I will definitely not bow down to fate. Yang Dingtian, just you wait, I'll definitely make you beg for death. I can't make Hai Xian fall in love, but I can at least humiliate your wife. Your Wu Maji, your Shimin Yinyen, your Ning Roer, all of your women, I'll torture them all. I'll definitely let you have a taste of this kind of unbearable pain. I've already thought about my next mission. It's revenge. I'll use all of my strength to take revenge on you, Yang Dingtian. Actually, Queen Hai Xian was also very dejected. Dongli had failed. Could it be that in this world, only Yang Dingtian could make her fall in love, and make the snake people give birth to a demigod descendant? Could it be that the heavens had decided that she could only choose Yang Dingtian? Could it be that the heavens had decided that Yang Dingtian was her nemesis? She really couldn't accept this. High Priest, what should I do? Queen Hai Xian said. Facts have proven that Yang Dingtian is the only man in this world, the only man who can transform our snake people empire. Without him, our snake people empire will die. Queen Seaheart's words were not wrong. Males and females of the snake people race could of course mate and give birth to offspring. However, that was when the females of the snake people race had yet to take human form and were still in their snake form. At that time, the snake people race was at their most unintelligent and weakest. Then, the descendants born would become the most ordinary sea serpents. Moreover, the sea serpents on land would never have a future. Once the females of the snake people race were over 200 or 300 years old and began to gain intelligence, and when they showed some human characteristics, they would definitely not marry the males. That meant that if there was no Yang Dingtian, the snake people empire, as an intelligent race, would completely disappear. Because after all, they were no longer an underwater empire. Their snake people race was the last bloodline left from ancient times. Of course, the snake people race had a very long lifespan, but as long as they did not transform into Naga, they would die one day, maybe 3,000 years, maybe 5,000 years. At that time, the snake people empire would be completely destroyed. What was the point of a snake people empire dying even if they were strong? What was the point of ruling the world? Previously, Hai Xian could still pin her hopes on Dongli, but now, this hope was completely shattered. High Priest, what should I do? Queen Hai Xian asked. The snake people empire's high priest was silent for a moment, then slowly said, Your Majesty, you can actually negotiate with Yang Dingtian. Help him fight against evil ways, and help him agree to the war of extinction. In return, he will help you and the snake people race give birth to enough offspring. Queen Hai Xian said, Doesn't that mean that we have to compromise? I don't want to compromise, especially not to him, the high priest said. Your Majesty, there is one thing that you have forgotten. We can still live for a few thousand years, but Yang Dingtian can only live for 200 years at most. After he dies, will his opinion still be important? He can't still control our snake people empire after he dies, right? Queen Hai Xian was stunned. That's right, Yang Dingtian could only live for 200 years at most. This important point had been forgotten by him all this time. No matter what she had promised him, no matter what he controlled when he was alive, as long as he died, everything would disappear. At that time, what could restrict her? 200 years might be a long time for humans, but to her, it was just a small fragment, because her life was really too long. Without further ado, Hai Xian decided to immediately go to the human countries to negotiate with Yang Dingtian, or rather to borrow his seed. After bidding farewell to the high priest, Queen Hai Xian did not say anything to anyone, and secretly left the Snake People Empire. She did not go to Cloud Sky City, but first went to Zhongjing, and appeared in front of the Council of Light headquarters as Mi Dai Nun. When Yun Zhenyu saw this familiar face, he was stunned. She really couldn't believe her eyes. Chapter 773. Master. Yun Zhenyu shouted in disbelief. At this moment, Queen Seaheart was no longer as radiant as before. Instead, she was dressed in a plain robe, reserved and dignified. Of course, her beautiful face could not be concealed. She had regained her Saintess Hai Xian look. Newer. Hai Xian touched Yun Zhenyu's face and said gently, "Seems like you are living a happy life." Yes. Yun Zhenyu smiled embarrassedly. Master, are you here for me? Or are you here for business? Hai Xian was slightly stunned. Is there a difference? Yun Zhenyu said, if you are here for me, I will bring you to my room for a private talk. If you are here for business, I can only ask sect leader Dongfang or city lord Qin to receive you. Hai Xian said, no, I am here to see you. Then, Yun Zhenyu brought Hai Xian to her room and brewed tea for her. Actually, Yun Zhenyu's emotions were very complicated. There was a saying that one's bottom decided one's head. She was Yang Dingtian's female officer. She would definitely think from the standpoint of the Council of Light. Hence, she knew that her master was now the queen of the Snakeman Empire. They were enemies. Furthermore, she could vaguely guess that her master had done something to her. Seeing Yun Zhenyu brewing tea, Hai Xian suddenly said, Newer, have you not been taken in by Yang Dingtian? Yun Zhenyu's face turned red. Why? He doesn't accept you? Hai Xian asked. Yun Zhenyu shook her head. I think it's good to be like this. Hai Xian remained silent for a moment. She watched as Yun Zhenyu finished brewing the tea, and poured a cup for her. She took a sip and said, Newer, master will be your backer and allow you to marry Yang Dingtian. You will also become the master of the Cloud Heaven City's valley. Is that okay? Yun Zhenyu's hand stopped. Then she shook her head and said, Master, I just want to live the life I have now. I don't want to marry into Cloud Heaven City's valley, at least not now. Hai Xian asked, why? Yun Zhenyu said, because I don't want to be restricted. Besides, I'm living a happy and fulfilling life now. I don't want to change. I'm afraid of change. Hai Xian frowned slightly. Then, Hai Xian smiled and said, Newer, what do you think of an alliance between the Naga Empire and the Council of Light to resist evil ways? Yun Zhenyu's heart skipped a beat. She was well aware of Yang Dingtian's attitude toward the Naga Empire, which was full of vigilance and even hostility. He also knew that his master was completely ambitious, and had even tried to imprison Yang Dingtian. Now what exactly did his master mean by saying these words? Instantly, Yun Zhenyu could not help but be cautious. She smiled and said, Master, I'm just a female official. I don't have the right to express my opinion on such a big matter. You have to talk to Yang Dingtian personally. Queen Hai Xian's beautiful eyes flashed with a haze. Then, she smiled and focused on drinking her tea, not saying anything else. Then, the room fell into an awkward silence. Hai Xian wanted to negotiate with Yang Dingtian. Instinctively, she looked for Yun Zhenyu, hoping that she could help. But now, it seemed that Yun Zhenyu was full of vigilance and resentment towards her master. It was impossible for her to be of any help. At this moment, in the Skull Hall, the demon spirit was still waiting behind the green door. Yang Dingtian was still hiding behind, quietly waiting for the door to the human kingdom to open. He had been waiting here for a few days. Damn it, no human had entered the hall, so the door had not opened. The demon spirit had been waiting impatiently for a long time. But she was not willing to give up. So she laid on the ground and fell asleep. Once she slept, she was sprawled on the ground. Her posture was very bold, causing Yang Dingtian to lower his eyes and not look at her. Just when Yang Dingtian and the demon spirit were completely unprepared. Suddenly, the green door to the human kingdom opened. A familiar figure suddenly flew into the Skull Hall. It was Dongli. Yang Dingtian could tell at a glance. He was still alive, and had just come from the human kingdom. It seemed like he was going to enter the little western paradise. The demon spirit who was sleeping suddenly woke up. Seeing the door open, she was overjoyed. She did not even wake up and rushed out. The door to the human kingdom would close quickly after it opened. So, Yang Dingtian hesitated for a moment, then rushed out like lightning. He wanted to kill Dongli, and the opportunity was very good. After entering the Skull Hall, he would fall into the spiritual illusion of the taboo continent. So he would not be able to see Yang Dingtian. It was a good opportunity for him to launch a sneak attack. However, Dongli's cultivation was similar to his. Even if he launched a sneak attack, it would be difficult to kill him in one hit. Because almost at the moment of the sneak attack, Dongli would immediately wake up. At that time, the door to the human kingdom would have closed. For the time being, it was more important to leave this place. After Dongli entered the Great Hall of Skulls, she woke up after only half a second in the spiritual illusion. Obviously, he knew the key points of the taboo continent's illusion. Every time, he could escape from the illusion in the shortest time possible. However, at this time, Yang Dingtian and the demon spirit had already left. The green door to the human kingdom had also closed. After the demon spirit rushed out, she quickly flew towards the east. Yang Dingtian, still invisible, followed closely behind. Soon, the demon spirit met two Nether Ocean's grandmasters. Then this simple-minded demon spirit was stunned. Not only did she not avoid them, she rushed forward excitedly and said, "Hey, are you Yang Dingtian's subordinates? Do you know where he is? Do you know how to get there?" Yang Dingtian was completely speechless. Did this girl think that any human was his subordinate? The two Nether Ocean's grandmasters' expressions changed. Then one of them said, "May I ask who you are?" The demon spirit said, "I'm the daughter of the Silvermoon clan's leader from Little Western Paradise." The Nether Ocean's grandmaster smiled and said, "That's right. We are Lord Yang Dingtian's subordinates. We were ordered to guard the entrance to the taboo continent's sea." The demon spirit said, "That's great. Tell me, how do I get to Yang Dingtian's home?" "Oh right, do you know Shadowless?" The Nether Ocean's grandmaster said, "Lord Shadowless from Yin School? We know each other. Is that okay? I'll bring you to Lord Yang Dingtian. How about it?" "All right," the demon spirit said. Just like that, the daughter of the Silvermoon clan's leader, Yaoli, was about to be abducted and sold the first time she entered the human continent. Yang Dingtian was truly speechless. Yaoli was stubborn, but at least she still had intelligence. This sister of his was completely being sold. She even had to help count the money. Just like that, Yang Dingtian watched as the Nether Ocean's expert took the demon spirit away. And at the entrance to the taboo continent's sea, there was only one Nether Ocean's grandmaster left to guard it. After the demon spirit and the Nether Ocean's grandmaster left, Yang Dingtian lightly flicked his finger. Pa! A demonic sky-splitting lightning struck the Nether Ocean's grandmaster's head. Without any ability to fight back, this Nether Ocean's grandmaster directly fainted. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Yang Dingtian directly grabbed him and quickly chased after the Nether Ocean's expert, who abducted the demon spirit, that a full 600 miles away. Yang Dingtian caught up with the Nether Ocean's expert, who abducted the demon spirit. He had already succeeded. Because the demon spirit had already fainted, he directly carried it on his shoulder and flew in the direction of the Nether Ocean. For this kind of beginner-level grandmaster, Yang Dingtian was completely able to kill him in one move. In an instant, he flashed behind him and slammed his palm down on his head. Just as the other party reacted and was about to counterattack, he was already heavily injured and directly fainted. Yang Dingtian carried the two Nether Ocean's experts and the demon spirit in his other hand, and directly flew towards the northwest continent. In the end, he discovered that the demon spirit's eyes were wide open, revealing a look of horror. It turned out that she didn't faint, but she couldn't move. At this moment, in her heart, the human kingdom had already changed from a beautiful place to a place of evil. The people here were too sinister. They were even more sinister than the people in Little Western Paradise. Just now the two middle-aged men were already bad enough. Now this young man had killed the two middle-aged men and snatched her away. Obviously, he was even worse. She didn't know what would happen if she fell into his hands. Instantly, the demon spirit was even more horrified. In Little Western Paradise, she was completely fearless. She even dared to assassinate the chairman Yao Qi. However, after entering the human continent, she didn't know why, but she instinctively felt a sense of weakness, the kind of uneasy feeling when entering an unfamiliar environment. She wasn't afraid of death. But what if? What if this dangerous human wanted her? Of course, she had already forgotten that humans were unable to make the demon fox race go into estrus. Before flying into the northwest continent, on the familiar route, Yang Dingtian met the demon vulture King Aja. During this period of time, it didn't dare to approach the taboo continent's sea region. Therefore, it would hover above the surrounding sea surface every day, waiting for Yang Dingtian. After seeing him, it flew over happily and desperately rubbed against Yang Dingtian's face. Riding on the demon vulture King Aja, Yang Dingtian placed the two experts of the netherworld sea aside. After that, he stretched out his hand to touch the demon spirit's wrist and inserted profound qi. He discovered that she had been poisoned. It felt like a neurotoxin that had sealed her meridians and entire body. However, it wasn't life-threatening. Yang Dingtian didn't have a way to detoxify the poison, but he could forcefully break the seal on her profound meridians. He directly inserted profound qi and broke the seal on her body. After regaining her mobility, the demon spirit suddenly screamed and desperately clutched her chest. "I'm warning you. I'm the daughter of the Silvermoon clan's patriarch. Your human king, Yang Dingtian, is my good friend. Don't touch me." Yang Dingtian was speechless. After the demon vulture King Aja heard it, it instantly screamed, "Miss Demon Spirit, I am your friend Yang Dingtian." After hearing Yang Dingtian's words, the demon spirit was instantly stunned. "Really? Really? Yang Dingtian? Great." The demon spirit directly rushed up and hugged Yang Dingtian's neck. "Shadowless is your subordinate, right? Hurry up and take me to see him, okay?" "Okay." Yang Dingtian. However, in the human countries, men and women shouldn't touch each other. "Shadowless is my elder. It's not good for you to hug me like this." The demon spirit stuck out her little tongue and released Yang Dingtian. Then she stared at him curiously. "Why do I feel that your tone is very familiar? A lot of people say so." Yang Dingtian. "Oh," the demon spirit said. Yang Dingtian. "Miss Demon Spirit, as far as I know, once you enter the human countries, you will quickly turn into a demon fox shape. It's difficult to stabilize your human form for a long time." "Well, I know," the demon spirit said. "But that doesn't matter. However, the human countries are really not a good place. Since I came in, my cultivation has been declining." Yang Dingtian rejoiced in his heart. This might be the god of chaos's protection for the human countries. The demon fox clan of Little Western Paradise couldn't stay in the human countries for a long time. Otherwise, they might really launch a large-scale invasion. Yang Dingtian touched Azeo's neck and said, "Did you tell Yin Yin and the others that I went out to do something? Tell them not to worry." Demon Vulture King Azeo nodded. Yang Dingtian. "Then what did you say? You can't speak." Demon Vulture King Azeo waved its claws and rode in the air. Immediately, Yang Dingtian was filled with admiration. As a flying mount, Azeo was truly ambitious. Not only did it learn to understand the primal chaos language, Chinese, and a small amount of English, but it even knew how to write. "Wow, your bird is so powerful. It can understand human language. Can you give it to me?" the demon spirit shouted. Yang Dingtian was speechless. Demon Vulture King Azeo rolled its eyes for a while and resisted the urge to throw her into the sea. "Please, I'm a demon vulture, not a bird. Also, your IQ is not as high as mine. You want to be my master? Keep dreaming." Yang Dingtian landed in Cloud Sky City, but he could only stay for a short time. Because of the secret report, Queen Hai Xian was in Zhongjing. Although she was with Yin Zhenu, her target seemed to be Yang Dingtian. The news of Queen Hai Exan entering the human countries completely shocked the entire Council of Light. Almost all the experts of the Council of Light came out. They were loose on the outside but tight on the inside, guarding the key points. As for Duga Xiao, he had been secretly guarding the vicinity of Cloud Heaven City. Young Dingtian was also shocked. As the queen of the Naga Empire, Hai Exan had never left her capital. What was the reason for her to come to the human countries? So Yang Dingtian took the demon spirit, rode on Demon Vulture King, and flew to Zhongjing at the fastest speed. He just didn't know if Shadowless was in Zhongjing or in the East Continent. 12 hours later, Yang Dingtian landed in Zhongjing. At this time, the entire Council of Light headquarters was on guard. When Dongfang Minmi saw the demon spirit, he couldn't help but be stunned. Who was this important person? Yang Dingtian actually brought her with him. Master, where's Uncle Shadowless? Yang Dingtian asked. In Yinyang School, Dongfang Minmi said. Yang Dingtian, ask him to come to Zhongjing as soon as possible. This woman beside me, if I'm not wrong, should be Master Shadowless's lover. Suddenly, Dongfang Minmi almost turned into a wooden statue. Half an hour later, Yang Dingtian secretly met with Queen Hai Exan in his room. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.